Marvin cut through the forest like a blade, slipping between trunks and roots with a speed that didn't match his age. His breath stayed steady. His steps were light. Every turn felt natural, like his body finally remembered what it was meant to do. Some classes came with talents nobody could properly explain. Thieves had a strange calm in crowds, the ability to steal while looking bored. Wizards could lock their focus onto a single point and ignore the world. But rangers belonged to the wild. Put them in the wilderness and they moved like they were born there. Marvin didn't linger after taking the Lich's severed finger from the magic chest. He had what he came for. Staying longer would be idiocy. The Scarlet Monastery wasn't a place you explored. It was a place you survived. Demon god enforcers, hidden monsters, and creatures strong enough to tear him apart without effort. One wrong corner, one moment of greed, and the run ended. So he retreated. He crossed the Hall Mountain Range toward the northwest, avoiding anything that felt wrong, keeping to safer routes, checking every ridge and shadow for movement. His real destination wasn't the monastery anymore. It was an abandoned altar in that region. That altar was the next step of his plan. And with the severed finger in hand, the plan suddenly became far more profitable. As he moved, Marvin opened his logs to confirm what he already feared. Knowledge, gods, Lich's severed finger. A Lich's finger, carrying a faint trace of divine power. This was a Lich on the edge of godhood, who failed at the final step. It sleeps, waiting for a return, and can sense every part of its body. Hidden inside this severed finger is the secret to reaching godhood. The divine trace is priceless to a god alchemist or witchcraft god, but to anyone else, it brings disaster. Marvin was firmly in the anyone else category. He wasn't a god. He wasn't blessed by one. He couldn't absorb divine power safely. Keeping this thing was like carrying bait soaked in blood. So he never intended to keep it. He intended to offer it. A sacrifice with divine residue would attract interest. Real interest. Enough to make old, distant beings glance his way. Especially the old elven gods. Old elven gods were second-generation old gods. The first generation was mostly gone, except for the one name that still carried weight even in silence. Wizard god Lance. Marvin remembered Lance clearly. An unconventional god among gods. When the heavens later chose to unite and strike the universe magic pool, Lance had been one of the rare few who opposed it. That alone made Marvin respect him. Because for mortals, the destruction of the universe magic pool wasn't politics. It was doom. That's why scholars named the coming collapse what they did, the Great Calamity. But the gods didn't care about mortal suffering. They cared about power, and the fourth fate tablet. So they attacked. The universe magic pool had once been a gift, built to help ordinary people master magic, become strong, and withstand the endless flow of monsters. It also served as a barrier, a protective shell around Feinan, keeping truly terrifying existences out. Because it protected all races, Lance had been revered above old gods and new gods alike. Many resented him, but none dared speak openly while he remained. Now he was gone, vanished for more than a millennium, and the gods had been restless for a long time. The disaster wasn't coming. It had already started. Marvin exhaled slowly and pushed his pace harder. 2 days later, the northwest edge of the Hall Mountain Range. A system prompt flashed. You discovered deathly silent hills. Knowledge, geography +1. A second entry followed. Deathly silent hills. Somber, desolate terrain. Complex hills and ravines. Often home to terrifying roaming creatures. Marvin stopped at the entrance and compared the ridges and slopes to the route in his memory. He hadn't strayed. The landmarks matched. He'd been lucky getting here. Only a few goblins tried him, and they died fast. The Hall Mountain Range was relatively safe. The deathly silent hills were not. Nomadic tribes, criminal hideouts, roaming monsters, fugitive camps. The kind of place where people disappeared and nobody asked why. Man-eating plants that swallow bodies without blood. Venomous snakes that killed in a blink. Swarms of insects that didn't behave like insects should. Most of that stayed deeper in. Marvin wasn't going deep. His target was a small cavern on the outer edge. He climbed a low hill and checked the sun's position, then checked again. The path was correct. By evening, he was close. And then he saw something he hadn't expected. In an open patch ahead, a brown bear roared in pure rage. Opposite it moved a tall man in a long black gown, dual daggers flashing like silver teeth. He didn't fight the bear like a hunter. He played with it. Every strike was cruel and precise, cutting in places that hurt the most, shallow enough to keep it alive, deep enough to make it suffer. The bear swung and lunged, but the man flowed away every time, too fast, too clean. Marvin crouched behind a tree and watched, heart tightening. At least 20 dexterity. Dagger mastery. Second rank, advanced ranger class. His mind snapped to the name like a warning bell. Dark murderer. This wasn't just strong. This was the kind of person who killed for practice. Marvin didn't move. He lowered his breathing until it barely existed. The black-clothed man kept carving the bear until it finally collapsed. By the time it died, the blood had dried in patches, and the fur looked shredded by countless rapid cuts. Then the man stopped and looked straight toward Marvin's hiding place. Marvin's stomach dropped. He found me. He knew it. Against a monster like this, his stealth was meaningless. But the man didn't attack immediately. He hesitated, like he was thinking, and then a smile touched his lips. "I'm in a good mood today," the man said lightly. "So I'll let you off." Something flew from his hand. "Huh!" It stabbed into the ground 3 steps in front of Marvin. The man turned, took a few soundless jumps, and vanished into the forest like he'd never existed. Marvin stayed still for 2 full breaths before he finally exhaled and stepped out, wiping sweat from his forehead. Lucky, he had something else to do. He bent down and picked up the object. A yellow card. Printed on it was a fang spider. Marvin's expression changed instantly. Shadow spider. A killer's mark. A warning. Show your face again, and you die. Marvin stared at the card, thoughts racing. Shadow Spider's base is supposed to be in the north, so why is one of them here? It didn't feel like coincidence. And Rivershore City was the only major city nearby, which meant this wasn't the last time their paths would cross. Tisich, Marvin clicked his tongue, folding the card and tucking it away. If they met again, he'd be crushed. He needed power. Fast. He resumed moving, scanning the hills for the right shape of stone and shadow. And before the sun dropped behind the mountains, he found it. A remote cavern, quiet enough to feel unnatural. No monster approached it. Not because the cave was empty, because something older than monsters had claimed it. Marvin stepped inside, walked straight to the deepest chamber, and stopped before an abandoned altar. The air around it felt protected, blessed, and hungry. The cavern was pitch dark. Marvin struck flint to steel, caught a spark, and lit a torch. He planted it in the mud beside the altar, the flame throwing shaky light across stone and dust. Then he got to work. He shifted broken rocks aside, scraping away the dirt until the altar's true shape emerged. It wasn't ruined, so much as forgotten. The High Elves had abandoned this region back in the Second Era. Time did the rest, but the altar's bones were still intact. And most importantly, its owner wasn't the type of god who demanded blind worship. The ancient elven god tied to this place was known for being reasonable, lenient, willing to deal with non-believers as long as the trade was fair. That was why Marvin dared to use it. If this had been an altar to an evil god, he would have walked away. Those beings didn't trade. They collected. Runes covered the floor in High Elven script, a language so old that even most modern elves couldn't read it properly. A system prompt flickered in his vision. You found an ancient elven altar. Knowledge, historical remains, +1. Knowledge, historical remains, ancient elven altar. An abandoned altar from the ancient elven era. Through it, one may establish simple communication with an ancient elven god or representative. Marvin wasn't fluent in the runes, but he didn't need to be. He knew the activation method. At the altar's center sat a shallow clay bowl filled with water, painted with fierce-looking monsters. Legends claimed those monsters were incarnations of the old elven god. Ugly, terrifying, and yet strangely kind. Marvin took out the lich's severed finger and lowered it into the bowl. 5 breaths passed. Then the braziers around the altar ignited all at once. PSHHH. 6 god flames. The altar was awake. Marvin smiled, a cold satisfaction in his chest. The divine trace in the lich's finger really did lure attention. Without it, he would have needed gemstones. A lot of them. This way, the altar lit itself for free, because what he offered was rare enough to be irresistible. At the center of the altar, flame gathered into a floating sphere, then stretched and formed into an ugly face, carved from fire and shadow. A voice rolled out, dry and ancient. "What do you want?" "Human offspring." Marvin's brows rose. Human? He'd assumed he was plain human. His race window still carried that question mark, hinting at something buried in his blood, but he hadn't expected this. Human were infamous. Born casters. Outsiders, not native to Feinan. In the Third Era, they'd built their own kingdom. Then the other races united to banish them into the void out of fear. Human were born sorcerers. But Marvin forced the thought aside. This wasn't the moment to untangle his bloodline. He made his request clear and fast. The flaming face listened, fell silent, then spoke again, slow and deliberate. "This is the severed finger of the Lich Ange-Marie. Power clings to it." A pause. "Your asking price is fair. Take 3 steps back. You will receive what you asked for." Marvin obeyed. He retreated 3 steps, stopping just outside the altar's boundary. The face dissolved. The clay bowl burst into flame, and the severed finger vanished inside it, devoured by divine fire. Trade completed. Marvin felt no regret. The finger was a disaster waiting to happen if he kept it. Better to turn it into something he could actually use. The flames thickened. 2 shadows formed within them, one tall and one short. At the same time, 2 balls of light shot forward and sank into Marvin's forehead. He didn't flinch. The elven old god had a reputation for clean deals. The first light unfolded into a blessing. Fertile blessing, dexterity +1. Simple, perfect. Dexterity was priceless. Marvin's rose to 19. With his battlefield title bonus, it could even touch 20 in the right situation. 20 meant a threshold, and thresholds meant specialties. Wall climb, he thought, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. Even conditional, that specialty would change fights. The second light was different. Not power, but binding. Loyalty mark. 2 followers will remain forever loyal to you. 2 figures stepped out from the altar's dying flames. An elf man, tall and sharp-eyed. An elf woman, shorter, calm, and deadly in the way she stood. They dropped to one knee without hesitation. "Master, Kyle Amber swears allegiance." "Master, Simone Agate swears allegiance." Marvin almost laughed. Amber and Agate, really? The old god's naming sense was as subtle as a hammer. Fond of gems, apparently, even when stamping family names on his creations. Marvin checked them quickly. No surprises. Exactly what he'd asked for. Second-rank phantom assassin helpers. Their builds were almost identical. Colleen slightly toward strength. Simone carried a touch more charisma. The rest matched the standard phantom assassin template. High dexterity, excellent perception, and a toolkit that screamed silent death. Their levels showed it clearly. Thief LV7, Phantom Assassin LV3. And they carried the skill that mattered most at this tier. Assassinate. With 2 real second-rank experts at his back, Marvin's world instantly felt safer. The only drawback was obvious. They weren't living elves. They were lives shaped by divinity. Intelligent and capable, but they wouldn't grow stronger through battle. For now, that didn't matter. For now, they were enough. Marvin's eyes hardened. Miller, killing my father, stealing my territory, using gnolls as his blade. This debt, Marvin whispered, gets paid in blood. He set Kyle on night watch, slept in the altar's protected warmth, and at first light the 3 of them left the deathly silent hills. 3 days later, they reached Rivershore City. Blackhorn Inn. Anna stared at the empty room and sighed, worry sitting heavy in her chest. She'd arrived the night before with 20 young guards. They entered the city in small groups, dressed like farmers, splitting into nearby in so nobody could connect them. Marvin had left her enough coin to arrange it all. He'd also left a letter, telling her not to panic, telling her he'd return soon. But the letter didn't calm her. She'd heard what happened to the Acheron gang, wiped out by a figure people whispered about like a ghost. A dual-wielding mask. Anna wasn't stupid. Marvin's new confidence, his sudden edge, it pointed in one direction. That killer was him. "Why do you always choose the dangerous path?" she muttered, helpless. She wanted to help him, but right now all she could do was wait and pray the city didn't swallow him whole. Her unease wouldn't fade. Then came a knock at the door. 3 knocks, rhythmic. Andre, she thought. The guard captain, loyal but reckless. Anna inhaled, then opened the door. 3 people stood there. Her breath caught. Young Master Marvin. Her eyes darted past him, taking in the 2 strangers behind him. Their stance, their calm. They weren't common cells words. "They are?" she asked carefully. Marvin smiled, controlled and confident. "Help I invited." Then he asked, "Andre and the others?" "Nearby," Anna said quickly. "They were furious when they heard you were attacked." "Good." Marvin nodded. "Have them leave in small groups. After sunset, gather at the east corner of the Rich District's public square." Anna blinked. "Rich District? Yeah." Marvin's voice dropped. "Tonight we deal with the real mastermind." He leaned closer. "Before that, I have something to handle. Make sure none of our people are recognized as White River Valley guards." Anna had a dozen questions, but the tone in Marvin's voice didn't allow debate. "Understood," she said. "Good." Marvin turned away. At sunset, outside the city hall, a big-bellied official climbed into a carriage, ready to go home. He didn't see the 3 figures watching from the dark. The carriage rolled into the Rich District. The fat official descended lazily and headed straight for his study. He had documents to burn, secrets to bury. But the moment he stepped inside, his skin prickled. Something was wrong.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
"Come." A hand covered his mouth just as he started speaking. The official immediately began to struggle. An ice-cold voice whispered in his ear, "I would remain calm and have a chat with me if I were you. If I wanted to kill you, you would already be dead right now. Do not count on those guards, as their reaction would be extremely slow. I can kill you before you finish calling for them 100 times. Can I let go of your mouth now?" Marvin jokingly asked. The fat official continuously nodded in cold sweat. Bang! Marvin easily struck down a pure white gem he stealthily fished from his pouch. The gem fell on the ground, making a clinking sound. "Don't try to be smart," Marvin warned him. "This is your last chance. Sit down." The official's legs went soft, and he sat on a chair. Marvin picked up the gem and put it in his pouch. This was a protection gem made by the Silver Church. It could increase inner divine light to protect the user. The official wasn't a fool, but it was a pity that Marvin's mind was faster. "Masked twin blades. Is that you?" The official got a clear view of Marvin's disguise and immediately became frightened. "What do you want?" "Discussing a business with you." Marvin sat, firm as a mountain, and not worried that the other side still had tricks. In fact, he had already checked the official's body when he shortly came in contact with him, and apart from this gem, there wasn't any other special item. "What business?" The official was livid. Bang! A small bag containing more than a dozen gems fell on the table. The official calmly took a look and weakly said, "This amount is below me." Marvin nodded. "Mr. Moreau is a high-ranked official of the city hall. This small amount naturally doesn't enter your eyes. But what about this?" He then gently placed a cute doll next to the gem pouch. Miro's face immediately became gloomy. "What did you do to Jenny? You bastard. I'll kill you." He seemed to have gone mad. That doll was a gift for his most loved daughter's birthday, but it now appeared in the hand of the masked twin blades. The other side's approach was very clear. This was a kidnapping. His own daughter was in their hands. Damn it, are all those guards eating shit? And there was still that private bodyguard who swore to have the strength of a peak second rank, and that he would definitely be able to protect Jenny. Miro's heart was filled with rage. If he didn't have a bit of reason left to suppress himself, he would have put his life on the line to deal with that masked guy. It was silent after a minute. "Calm down now," Marvin indifferently said. "So, can we go on with our business discussion?" "You are kidnapping. This is a threat. We aren't having a business discussion," Miro coldly said. "It doesn't matter, as in any case, Mr. Miro isn't less capable of similar business." Marvin watched the other side's eyes, and sure enough, the official felt uneasy. Being in that position for so many years, how could he not have his hand in a bit of unclean business? He had shares in 1/3 of River Shore City's slavery business. As for kidnapping and murder, those were simply common. But he didn't anticipate that someone would have ideas on him. In fact, it wasn't that his second-rank helper was useless. Rather, Marvin's 2 phantom assassins were actually extremely hard to deal with. They directly beat down that guy and then took away the little girl. Marvin didn't plan to do anything to the little girl. He simply used her as a bargaining chip, nothing more. And it seems that this little girl was quite important to Miro. "Say, how much do you want? I heard you were a hired it man. How much did the other side pay?" "I'll double it. Give me Jenny back quickly," Miro quickly said. "Miss Jenny can safely come home. On the premise that you can accomplish this thing." Marvin gently handed an envelope to the Miro. "I don't want any more trouble tonight. If there is no issue, Miss Jenny can go home tomorrow." "All right. Since you don't want that pouch of jewelry, so be it." Marvin then took that bag of jewelry back and turned around to leave. A servant entered from the outside and asked, stunned, "Master, that person." Miro suppressed his anger. "He is my friend." He then sent the servant away, opened the letter, and read it. Afterwards, his face kept changing. Before sunset, wealthy public square, a few scattered people were pacing back and forth in the shadows. All unfamiliar faces. A tall knight said in a low voice, "Pay attention. There cannot be any problem in the wealthy district." The rest of the followers continuously nodded. The knight wore a silver light. This was a special second-rank class silver knight, as proof of identity. As the patrol leader, his sense of smell was quite sharp. Those 10+ ordinary civilians gathered here. There certainly was something amiss. The wealthy district was his jurisdiction, and he wouldn't allow any problems to occur. But at that time, the sound of horses approaching from a distant location could be heard. "Sir Fred, this is Sir Miro's warrant." That was a light cavalry knight, bringing the city hall's most important person's warrant. Fred took the warrant, and his face changed. "Is this serious?" The light cavalry knight didn't answer, only harshly said, "This is Sir Miro's assessment." Fred clenched his teeth and began to gather all his subordinates before rushing toward the dock area. Fred's warrant said that they found traces of demon god worshippers' activities in the dock area. He personally ordered to transfer all patrols to search the dock area. He must catch the demon god worshippers tonight, or the consequences might be horrible. Compared with the demon god worshippers, those rough gang members were basically nothing. Anyways, even if something bad happened, there was still Sir Miro. The patrol whistled past. A few young men in the edge of the wealthy public square suddenly wore a shocked expression. "Andre," they left the patrol ground. "What is going on?" They were in a circle around a tall man, somewhat curious. They were very young, but their aptitudes were impressive. Anna had personally selected good seedlings from White River Valley farmer families. There were a total of 20 young guards taking care of White River Valley's daily patrol tasks. But they were still unable to withstand facing a few hundred gnolls and could only cover the territory's inhabitants while retreating on Anna's orders. "I don't know. It might be Miss Anna's plan." Andre scratched his head. "We just have to follow Miss Anna." "I heard that Sir Lord was attacked. Who are we up against?" A thin and small boy butted in. "It's the first time I came to River Shore City. It's really huge. If not for Sanders leading, we might have all gotten lost. Whoever is behind the scenes and put his hand on our Sir Lord, I'll definitely pay him back in full." At this time, a pleasant voice echoed behind them. "What about you?" Half-elf Anna came out of the shadows, showing a sharp gaze. The 20 guards immediately stood at attention and whispered, "We are ready to follow behind Sir Lord and Miss Anna." Anna nodded in satisfaction. There was no need to doubt those young men's loyalty. They were raised in the territory and had an extremely high sense of belonging toward White River Valley. Sir Lord already planned everything, and he has the means to take back the territory, Anna calmly said. But before that, we have to take revenge first. I investigated during my time in Rivershore City and found that the old lord's unexpected death was instigated. What? Andre almost jumped out. The guards and the old lord had an extremely good relationship. And Andre himself was an orphan adopted by the old lord and considered to be an adopted son. They couldn't believe that the kind old lord was murdered. Who was it? The young guards impatiently asked. At that time, a rough voice came out from an alley not too far away. Wealthy District's Miller. Everyone looked for the voice's owner, only to see a shadow standing in the alley. Masked twin blades, Andre shockingly said. Tonight, follow me to kill that guy that killed his own elder brother, Marvin said while feigning to be cold under the mask. Rest assured that your lord has paid me more than enough. I am standing on your side. There was some unease in the guard squadron. These young lads were fearless. For their lord, they wouldn't mind even if they had to attack Rivershore city gates. They were White River Valley guards, and they only ever obeyed their lord's orders. But now they had to accept that hitman's leadership. It was somewhat hard to accept. Even though they only recently arrived at Rivershore City, they had still heard the rumors concerning that hitman. It was said that this guy single-handedly took care of an entire gang. Wasn't that too frightening? Miss Anna. Andre was awkwardly looking at the half-elf butler. But Anna surprisingly said with a cold face, "This is the Lord's order." Andre blankly nodded and said, "I got it." Marvin said in a rough voice, "Done wasting time?" It was hard to send the patrol away. "Tonight, we must be quick. Come with me quickly." Then masked twin blades shadow disappeared in the alley. The 20 guards immediately followed, and Anna stayed there. She had something more important to take care of. Marvin skillfully moved through the alley, as he was already well acquainted with this city repartition of power. The city lord was the strongest. He was unmatched and on the brink of becoming a legendary wizard. His strongest general was the leader of the wizard corps. After that was the patrol. Every soldier in the patrol was a second-rank fighter, incomparably strong. They were in charge of the public security in Rivershore City. As long as the patrol was sent away, Marvin had nothing to fear. Even if Miller was very wealthy, his mansion's defensive courtyard only had 5 or 6 mercenaries forming a small team, plus 2 second-rank class holders. Based on Marvin's plan, Miller was already dead, being able to ruthlessly poison his own brother. "I'll never let that kind of man stay alive in this world," he inwardly swore. After taking a turn, they arrived at a relatively deserted area. An old goblin wearing a pince-nez was waiting there while smiling. He was called Bane, and while on the surface he was running a pawn shop, he secretly had a lot of ties to many of the local gangs. As long as you provided enough money, these guys would sell you anything. After Marvin returned to Rivershore City, the first thing he did was to redeem his necklace. After that, he used Masked Twin Blades' identity and made a deal with the old goblin Bane. "Sir Masked Twin Blades, this way, please." Bane chuckled and led everyone to a villa in the wealthy district. The young guards were nervously looking at everything. The party took advantage of the darkness of the night to go around the villa, and then the old goblin took out a key and opened the door. This was a small warehouse filled with crates. A total of 20 leather armors and the weapons for military training are all inside. The old goblin laughed. "As long as you have enough money, we, the Black Claw Chamber of Commerce, can sell you anything you wish. Obviously, don't attack the city lord's mansion with those things. I'm not worried about you getting into trouble, but that you wouldn't come back." Bane did a badly timed joke. No one would use these discarded military weapons to attack the city lord's mansion. Now was the wizard era, and a wizard using Greater Ice Ring could make half of the guards lose their fighting strength. And to face a wizard in this era was a joke. The Great Calamity hadn't happened yet. The universe magic pool was still intact, and the heavenly gods hadn't come to an agreement yet. But Marvin knew that it would happen soon. "Go in," Marvin ordered. "Equip the leather armor. I know you received the most basic militia training, but your opponents are professional mercenaries. I promise your lord to not let any of you fall tonight. As such, rookies, tightly fasten your leather armor for me." Marvin gave directions as someone with a lot of experience, making Andre somewhat dissatisfied yet unable to get angry. In fact, when he was playing, Marvin, as a pro scout, once took part in the underground human city expedition battling against dark elves. He underwent a pretty decent army training, a lot stronger than these few militia at the very least. The underground humans themselves were stronger than their surface counterparts, and Marvin didn't even need to say anything about dark elves. From Marvin's point of view, pointing out a few faults wasn't that easy. The fighting had yet to start, but he immediately did a display of strength to these young men. To completely convince them, they had to obey his orders in this kind of battle. These young lads were still well trained, and they didn't take long to put on the leather armor. Protection was very important in battles because the human body was quite weak. Before the third rank, Heavenly Enlightenment, all class holders couldn't prevent injuries without protective equipments. But of course, wizards were an exception. Wizards' magic completely crushed the skills of the other classes. This was the reason why wizards were ruling this world. Therefore, people always said that even the greatest god had a favorite. The number one old god Lance created Feinan and favored all races, but still treasured the wizards. But this would change very soon. "I heard the whole patrol is at the dock area." The old goblin on the side watched the guards finish equipping themselves and couldn't help but narrow his eyes with something in mind as he tentatively asked. Marvin coldly replied, "Businessmen shouldn't ask too much." Bane laughed. Of course. But patrols might not be your biggest issue." The old goblin roguishly smiled. "Sir Masked Twin Blades, I know your target. Wealthy District 31, that fatty called Miller. I have a very valuable piece of information to sell you." Marvin frowned. Speaking of dealing information at that time, the old goblin's goal was quite obvious. He was taking the opportunity to raise the price. Andre and the others were ready and waiting. They saw the two people discussing and were somewhat astonished. They were only soldiers, and their brains weren't that quick to keep up. Marvin whispered, "How much?" 5 gold. Crook. A cold light ray flashed. The curved dagger was already on the old goblin's neck. "Couldn't it be cheaper?" Marvin said. The old goblin kept his composure. "This is a piece of information that could save your life." Whoosh. Marvin took back his curved dagger and threw out 5 golds from the void conch. The faint golden color flashed past in the candle-lighted warehouse, almost blinding Andre and the others' eyes. They were all poor children from the White River Valley. Where could they see that much money? "Boss, could it be that a hitman earns so much?" One member whispered. "That was 5,000 silvers." Andre bitterly smiled, also confused. Surely even their lord wasn't that wealthy? Where did he find such a great expert? Andre's temper was quite straightforward. If he was unable to understand, then he didn't want to. In any case, if it was the lord's order, follow it. The old goblin's expression immediately turned quite grave after getting the coins. "I know you got paid to eliminate Miller's family. However, the strength behind that old guy is more powerful than you think. You obviously can exterminate them tonight, but I fear that there will be a lot of troubles." Marvin coldly said, "I kill, I don't fear troubles." Bane snorted, "The Twin Snakes cult, have you heard of it?" Marvin's pupils immediately shrinked. Twin Snakes cult. He had definitely heard of that name. Far more than heard. He and those disgusting demonic followers fought no less than a dozen times in his previous life. He remembered his first death in the game was during a fight with a Twin Snakes cult follower. He had died in the explosion of that self-detonating fanatic. That was a humiliation in Marvin's game career. How could he not remember? Miller belongs to the Twin Snakes cult. Marvin also became solemn. No wonder there had been no news of this guy for so many years until he suddenly became rich and returned to Rivershore City. If he's a Twin Snakes cult member, then everything makes sense. Hold on. Suddenly, Marvin had an insight. The Twin Snakes members had always been operating secretly. Because East Coast Holy Light Tower's legendary wizard Anthony used Eyes of the Bright Sun every day to keep a close watch on them. This legendary wizard's daughter died under a Twin Snakes conspiracy, and as long as he was alive, Twin Snakes cult wouldn't dare to operate. But now, Twin Snakes cult members were actually showing up in Rivershore City. If Marvin guessed right, this meant that the legendary wizard Anthony was already close to dying. Anthony's death wasn't natural. It was due to a god called Shadow Prince. This was the god's first step toward the destruction of the universe magic pool. I have to hurry up, Marvin fearfully thought. The Great Calamity is coming faster than I thought. East Coast, Holy Light Tower. An old man, seemingly in poor health, was standing on a tall secret platform as his gown swayed in the wind. A sun-like I was floating in the air in front of him. I'm dying. The old man had wrinkles across his whole face, and looking at the eye, he said, "It's already been 1 hour. I won't be able to keep suppressing it." If Marvin was here, he could recognize this legendary, iconic item. Eye of the Bright Sun on top of the Holy Light Tower. Who is it? A voice inside the Bright Suns, I asked impatiently. We are on the way, another voice said. It's too late, said the legendary wizard Anthony. Don't mind me. They already made their decision. Doomsday is approaching for all wizards. The Bright Sun, I turned silent. Even so, we can't let this group of damned gods easily get away with it. A determined female voice came out of the Bright Sun, I saying, the universe magic pool is a gift Lance left us. We cannot let them profane it. Chloe, we can't stop them. Anthony sighed. I'm already unable to maintain the eye of the Bright Sun, and the Twin Snakes cult is about to become rampant. His words were cutting off. At that time, a beautiful young person walked behind him. Teacher, I found a medicine that might cure you, the young person said. What? Anthony looked at his own disciple walking toward him while showing some slight surprise. Suddenly, the disciple's appearance became extremely twisted. Two small twin snakes, one green and one red, began to rotate in his eyes. You are. The legendary wizard didn't finish his sentence. A unique dagger was ruthlessly stuck into his lower back. Anthony, what happened? From the Eye of the Bright Sun came the startled shouts of many legendary wizards. The young person laughed. After the assassination of the Shadow Prince, the great Scarlet Patriarch himself made this cursed dagger. How long can you live? Beloved teacher, Rivershore City, wealthy district, darkening night. Miller used the Twin Snakes cult's secret poison to kill your old lord. So if you wish to avenge him, follow my orders. 20 people were gathered outside of Villa 31. Marvin whispered in a low voice. Miller's villa is divided in 3 layers, and there are several hidden sentries in the outer layer waiting for us. I need you to take care of the second layer, mercenaries. He said that and pointed at the faintly visible shadows of the 2 phantom assassins behind the group. Even if Andre was quite curious where his lord had found that many experts, since Miss Anna already approved, this shouldn't be an error. He calmly nodded. It was nothing more than a few mercenaries. They were confident in being able to take care of them. Don't be careless, Marvin warned. There are some fierce second-rank guys among the mercenaries. Even if they only have 5 or 6, their lives are in their hands. I know. Andre displayed a guard leader's manner for the first time, replying, I will take 11 people to deal with them. There are 8 men left ready and waiting for your orders. Marvin nodded, satisfied. The ability of White River Valley's young men to carry out a task wasn't bad. Next, it was time to take revenge. Marvin suddenly used stealth, and those 2 phantom assassins followed with strong stealth. The group of 3 moved toward the few sentries near the villa, 1 in front and 2 in the back. There was no moon tonight. The sky was quite dark, most fitting to kill and then burn. The wealthy district was quite far from Rivershore City. Moreover, wealthy people were usually very indifferent and didn't pay attention to what happened to their neighbors. There were patrols everywhere. Unfortunately tonight, the patrols were all focused on the dock area, and they wouldn't come back for a while. Now was the time when Miller's place was the least protected. Marvin was definitely not going to miss this chance. Perhaps the Acheron gang's destruction made Miller a bit more vigilant. as Marvin found a lot of extra hidden sentries posted throughout the villa surroundings. And among those was a small 6-man team patrolling the surroundings irregularly. Oh, he spent a lot of money. Marvin knew that for the Twin Snakes cult, even if they weren't necessarily all fighters, they still had a few hidden methods. This evening might be a bitter struggle, but getting rid of those hidden sentries wasn't an issue. In less than 10 minutes, Marvin and those 2 phantom assassins easily eliminated all those hidden sentries outside Miller's house. Even that small 6-man team was quickly and efficiently annihilated under the sneak attack of the 3. All those fights happened under the watch of Marvin's guards hiding in the bushes. Too strong. Forget about those 2 phantom assassins. That guy, masked twin blades, is obviously just a ranger. How could he be so skilled in assassination techniques? If we were their target, the guard's whisper made them all tremble with fear. Meeting this kind of killer's gaze was definitely a misfortune. At that time, Andre felt quite glad that the young and vigorous team members didn't have a conflict with masked twin blades. He was quite glad that this frightening hitman was on their side. After clearing the surroundings, Marvin made a sign toward the bushes, hinting that their operation was starting along with his own. He turned around a corner to go toward the back door of the villa. Seeing Marvin and the other 2 disappear behind a fence, Andre took out a long sword and displayed a rarely seen sinister face. "Brothers, follow me." Damn, I already disliked that Miller guy, and then he even went so far as to kill the old lord and also colluded with the gnolls. Our lord invited masked twin blades to kill him, but we also need to kill a few soldiers to relieve our anger. Inside a warm room, the plump Miller was sitting on a couch with his eldest son Bob sitting in front of him. On the side of the living room stood the shadows of 2 tall men. Whenever Miller and his son had glanced at those 2 shadows, they felt exceptionally safe. They were true savage fighters. It was worth paying for a second rank berserker. Barbarians had instincts close to an animal's, so they had 2 super bodyguard close by. Most people simply couldn't get close. Bob withdrew his gaze and calmly said, "Father, it looks like the gnolls over there aren't able to hold back. Apparently, they found something very important in the castle tunnels." Miller narrowed his eyes, looking just like a snake. I knew those hired beasts wouldn't keep their promises. They took White River Valley and definitely thought it was for them. "What should we do?" Bob worriedly asked. "Fool, we have the backing of Sir King Cobra, and you are still afraid of a group of gnolls." Miller sneered and said, "As long as that Marvin dies, I'll immediately force the city hall to send troops to suppress those gnolls. I won't even give them the chance to speak." Bob was fearfully looking at Miller. "Father, when will you recommend me to Sir King Cobra?" "It's not urgent," Miller gently said. "The Twin Snakes cult's rules are quite complex, and only a true believer is able to become a member. Your faith is not resolute enough. If you met Sir King Cobra now, he would swallow you whole." As he said so, 2 small snakes, one red and one green, emerged and started rotating in his eyes. I originally thought that I didn't have a chance to get my things back in this lifetime. I didn't expect to coincidentally have the chance to become a member of the Great Twin Snakes of Doom cult. Now that Jean is dead, everything else isn't an issue, Bob said. "But since the Twin Snakes of Doom cult is so fierce, why do you dare to walk under the sunlight? You dare to question the Twin Snakes of Doom cult's prestige?" Miller suddenly yelled, the 2 snakes in his eyes almost jumping out. He seemed like a roaring lion and slapped Bob's face, sending him under the window from the couch. Bob was dizzy from the slap, and his face started swelling. "I was wrong, Father." He quickly reacted and swiftly kneeled on the ground to beg forgiveness. "Even if you are my son, I cannot lower your punishment," Miller ruthlessly said. "Crawl over here and then stretch out your left hand." Bob didn't dare to resist and was about to comply. But at that time, a joking voice could be heard. "I'm sorry for disturbing your family punishment, but I guess you also have a bad opinion of uninvited guests." Bang! The glass window shattered. A shadow flew in and then rolled on the floor, his movements incomparably flawless. Cold light flashed along with 2 slashing sounds, and the recently kneeling Bob directly lost his head. Masked twin blades. So it was you. Miller was startled and angry. With regard to what Miller said, masked twin blades was his nightmare ever since he had returned to Rivershore City. He never expected that he would face such an enemy. He originally thought that he was Diaphius' enemy and had only killed his son in passing. After all, this kind of hitman was quite cruel. He already asked a Shadow Spider member to take care of this guy. It's just that damned hitman. I paid so much, and he still told me that he had other business to settle and that he would go and look for masked twin blades in the evening. Miller wasn't only angry, he was also startled. How'd he break in? What about those sentries all around? What about those mercenaries? Don't bother thinking. They're already dead. Marvin indifferently said. Miller shivered and immediately hid behind those two barbarians. He asked while gnashing his teeth, "Who is the one that hired you in the end? Are you not aware that I'm very wealthy? If you hadn't killed both my sons, we might have been able to cooperate." His eyes had already turned red. His two sons died like this. This hitman's killing methods were too ruthless and vicious. There was no way back. Kill him. Kill him. I want him cut into pieces. Miller crazily yelled. Those two barbarians quickly took out big axes from behind their backs, each carrying his in the right hand while keeping the left hand near the waist, where two small hatchets were hanging. Marvin was paying attention to their movements, and it was quite clear from his battle experience that barbarians throwing hatchets were difficult to deal with. Who hired me? Marvin calmly moved back half a step, immediately attracting the three men's attention on his body. Who is it? Say it. Miller made a sign, temporarily stopping the barbarians from attacking. Who could have? Marvin said with ridicule. Could it be that you don't recognize me with a mask on? Dear uncle, you didn't expect this day to happen when you poisoned my father? When you collaborated with the Acheron gang to plot against my life? You also didn't expect masked twin blades to appear? Marvin's voice returned to normal. Miller became extremely shocked. This is impossible. He heard the familiar voice and showed an alarmed expression. How do you know all this? You are obviously a waste. No magical talent and no fighting ability. Marvin skillfully played with his curved dagger and coldly said, This proves that you misjudged me, just like I misjudged you too. I could hardly believe that you were the kind of person that would murder his own brother. Miller was breathing heavily, and soon after, he said with a sinister face, You knew. So what? I had a hard time looking for you. Who could have thought that you would come to my doorstep? As long as I kill you today, White River Valley will be mine, the secret inside the castle. He stopped talking, his eyes suddenly moving and revolving. His laughter became gloomy and cold. What are two sons? As long as I can get that thing. Haha, perhaps you are not aware. I already received the great twin snakes of doom. S blessing. You are destined to die today. Kill him. He finally gave the order. The small and hard-to-notice snakes in his eyes felt especially weird. Under Miller's command, the two barbarians, one in front and one in the back, began their assault. Even though the living room was wide, it was still extremely cramped for a fight between class holders. Whoosh! The first barbarian's attack had still not arrived when small hatchets were already approaching. This type of hatchet was exceptionally sharp. For a ranger like Marvin, as long as he got hit once, if he didn't die, then he would end up disabled for life. Miller's smile was very sinister. For him, Marvin was as good as dead. Wearing a mask to scare people, you can only scare those unsuspecting civilians. But in fact, Marvin had been focused on observing the barbarians' hand movements all along. So the second they threw their hatchets, he made a move. Huh. He gently shouted, his whole body suddenly moving in a stance that defied gravity. He stepped on the window ledge and walked over the ceiling. During that split second, not only Miller, but even the two barbarians just looked at him, blankly staring. 20 dexterity special skill. Anti-gravity steps. Because he was facing multiple enemies, Marvin's title, Chaotic Battle Expert, was displaying its +1 dexterity effect. Marvin's body was as light as a swallow, and he nimbly jumped to the ceiling and quickly rushed forward from there like a vampire. Roar! The barbarians felt humiliated. Facing a first-rank ranger, the two were surprisingly not able to put him down. They were unable to accept this. They were preparing to move toward Marvin. But suddenly, two shadows flashed through from both sides of the pillar, like two black phantoms. The two shadows were as fast as lightning and directly impacted the barbarians. In an instant, Marvin could see the two barbarians in an extremely weak state. Plan successful. Marvin was pleased and abruptly adjusted his body to drop down. Curved daggers in both hands, he easily cut the two barbarians' heads off. Plop, plop. Blood madly sprayed, and Marvin's entire sneaking attire was dyed red from blood. He wiped his curved dagger in passing, and then coldly looked at Miller, like a devil king that just came out of blood pool. How could this be? It was as if Miller had seen a ghost, looking at those two strong barbarians dying in front of him. He couldn't believe it. Those were true second-rank berserkers. Why did it seem like Marvin was able to kill them like cutting cabbage? This must be a hallucination. Miller took 2 steps back, stumbled, and fell on a couch. At that time, he looked at those 2 faint silhouettes that were crawling up from the barbarians' bodies with difficulty. It was 2 elves. They appeared to be in a very bad shape, standing unsteadily. You worked hard. Look for a safe place and heal yourselves before looking for me, Marvin indifferently said. Amber and Agate nodded, and the 2 disappeared in the shadows while supporting each other. Miller suddenly realized. Actually, Marvin had just attracted the 2 barbarians' attention and let those 2 elves take care of pinning the barbarians down. Originally, with the barbarians' abnormal constitution, if they used ancestral blessing, they would be as hard to kill as a wizard of the same rank. But they had underestimated the first-rank Ranger Marvin. They focused their attention on Marvin's body instead of the quietly creeping shadows on the sides. This was Marvin's plan. As a legendary player, he never was a reckless person, and his tactics and strategies reached a very high standard. Phantom Assassin had an overpowered skill, Desperate Strike. Desperate Strike. Ignore a target's defenses, forcing the target to enter a near-death state. This certainly was a heaven-defying skill. It was very cool in the game, and quite a lot of players picked assassins because of this class skill. But actually, this skill's side effects were very severe. They would have to stay in a weak state for at least half a month. This meant that those 2 elven phantom assassins couldn't help Marvin deal with more stuff for half a month. Their own lives might be in danger at any time. On top of that, Desperate Strike didn't have a 100% hit rate. If the barbarians were a bit cautious and used ancestral blessings, they might have been able to barely avoid dropping down from that frightening life gambling skill. Because of this, Marvin's plan was quite risky, but his luck was good and his plan was effective. The Phantom Assassins left the battlefield, and he successfully gained 2 barbarian heads. This won him 480 battle EXP. That kind of godlike last hit felt extremely good. To have 2 loyal and devoted subordinates like that, Marvin felt that offering divinity as a sacrifice wasn't a loss. What else do you want to say? Marvin stared at Miller. All the fat on his body shivered. You can't kill me. I'm a Twin Snakes of Doom follower. If you kill me, Sir King Cobra will find you and turn you into a puppet. Miller seemed to hold onto his last hope, desperately struggling. Right, you don't dare to kill me. He suddenly became full confidence and nervously laughed. I originally advised your father to become a member of the Twin Snakes of Doom, but he actually criticized it as an evil cult. It was only natural that I would kill him. He was brazen enough to insult the great Twin Snakes of Doom. Serves him right. You also are a little bastard. Sir King Cobra will avenge me. Marvin was looking at him with some pity in his eyes, brainwashed into an evil follower. Do you think I didn't make any preparations? The Twin Snakes cult really have a way to follow an enemy's trail. But I'm sorry, I actually know of a way to restrain it. Marvin punched Miller and then took out a dagger before ruthlessly stabbing it into the 2 small snakes in his eyes. Ah! A blood-curdling screech echoed in the room. And outside the window, flames were raging. Chaos. If an ordinary person killed a Twin Snakes believer, a secret technique would imprint the murderer's appearance and send it to the upper ranks of the cult at the time of his death. Very few people knew how to break the technique, and Marvin was one of them. This method was actually quite ruthless. Dig their eyes out before killing them. Twin Snake's believers had two easily controllable, poisonous snakelet embedded inside their eyes, which are used to transmit signals. As long as their eyeballs are destroyed before they are killed, it's unlikely that the murderer will be discovered. This method was extremely ruthless, and the howl could be heard even outside the room. Marvin wasn't merciful. He wasn't cold-blooded. It was because he knew that when facing that kind of malicious person or an evil cult follower, he had to thoroughly deal with the problem. He couldn't leave something that could come back to bite him. After killing Miller, he noticed the towering flames outside. Taking advantage of the patrols being busy at the docks and the rest of the troops in the wealthy district just watching, Marvin made his guards plunder as much easy-to-carry stuff as they could. You only have 10 minutes. Get as much as you can. Marvin instructed them. Andre and the others dealt with the hired mercenary team and swiftly followed Marvin's order. Because all the money would go back to their lord, they didn't have any reason not to do it. 10 minutes soon passed. The fire spread further, but Marvin started to have a bad feeling. Sir Mask, we found a secret room. There's a lot of jewelry inside. One of the guards excitedly said, "Don't take it. Time to go." Marvin felt increasingly more worried and immediately gave a decisive command. Andre also knew when to stop. They had killed and burned within the city and were still looting. He reckoned that even the boldest group of thieves wouldn't dare to do something like this. If they were caught by the patrol, death penalty. But what made everyone feel strange was that those patrols that normally defended the wealthy district had still not appeared. "Hurry up," Andre urged them. The group of guards left. Marvin stayed behind to cover their back. But in the distance, a swift shadow suddenly came running at lightning speed. He was very quick, and it seemed like he was going to intercept those guards. Not good. Marvin clenched his teeth and abruptly dashed a few steps forward. He jumped over the fence and blocked in front of the shadow. Andre and the others missed this and directly turned into an alley, following the escape route. Fuck! That shadow quickly rushed toward Marvin. "You're masked twin blades." Marvin became startled when he saw that guy. It was that strong guy he met in the deathly Silent Hills. Second rank, dark murderer. Looks like a shadow spider member. I'm not his opponent. Marvin's heart shivered. His opponent was a senior with superior dexterity, and his running speed definitely was faster than his own. He would certainly not be able to escape if he turned and ran. "Damn it, you actually killed that fat pig, Miller?" That shadow spider killer gave an ugly look at those towering flames in the villa, his thoughts evident. He was in a very bad mood. Miller died, so he didn't have an employer, and his mission automatically failed. This meant that he would fall a little in the shadow spider mission system. This kind of bad mood, he could only vent on that masked twin blades. Even killing him wouldn't change anything, but he was in a bad mood. People alive were unable to relieve this kind, unpleasant mood. The killer suddenly took out a dagger and grinned, "Die." But Marvin suddenly had an idea and waved his wrist. A light yellow shadow flew out. The killer suddenly caught that card. The card was light yellow. A fanged spider was drawn on top of it. "What? You're also a shadow spider member?" The killer looked blankly. It was really dark out there, so he wasn't able to check the details of the card. When the sun has yet to rise, we quietly murder. Marvin's left hand made the motion of cutting someone's throat. He then turned serious. His heart was pounding very fast. He didn't know if he could deceive him. The killer expression turned white, and he suddenly threw that yellow card on the ground and cursed. "Such great luck to actually meet one of us." The shadow spiders had a very strict rule: don't kill one another. He scratched his head, swore a few times, and then bitterly said, "I guess I'm unlucky, damn it." Marvin felt relieved. He calmly turned around and walked with a kind of steady pace toward that alley. He was nervous. He must be able to act first if the other side even had a hint of killing intent. He was lucky. Marvin took a turn at the corner, and the other guy still hadn't discovered anything wrong. When he walked into the alley, Marvin instantly sped up, suddenly crazily running. If he didn't escape now, then when? The flames were still raging, and the killer was still extremely angry. After a while, he retrieved the yellow card. The shadow spider sign shouldn't be left lying around. But at that time, under the light of the fire, he suddenly felt that the card was awfully familiar. I messed up. The killer's face turned green. Isn't that my fucking card? There was a small mark on the card, his own seal. Every Shadow Spider member had similar cards, but they all had a unique mark. They couldn't be imitated. The killer instantly understood that he had been tricked. That masked twin blades wasn't a Shadow Spider hitman. It's just that he still had doubts. How did that guy know the Shadow Spider precept? That sentence, "When the sun has yet to rise, we quietly murder," was an oath every Shadow Spider member would swear upon joining the order. Every killer would vow to protect it and not leak it to the outside, or they would be hunted down. That masked twin blades, how did he learn our internal secret signal? No matter how, I must find him and then cut him into pieces. Under the reflection of the fire, the killer's face seemed to be twisted. The sound of hooves could be heard not too far away. It was the patrol hurrying over. Morning of the next day, the news of the wealthy district incident couldn't be suppressed. The death of the merchant Miller and all his family quickly spread through all of Rivershore City. Every bar was spreading a different version of the rumor. Some said that it was the Twin Snakes cult's work, and others said that it was masked twin blades. Rivershore City had been peaceful for too long, and never before had someone dared to look down on the authority of the city hall like that. Because behind the city hall was Rivershore City's wizard regiment. Regardless of whether or not the patrols were able to capture the murderer on the scene, the wizards would be able to find him. This was a very serious offense. Therefore, under City Hall High official Mr. Moreau's strong request, a wizard proficient in divination was called to the crime scene. He could use a second circle spell that could go back in time to find the identity of the assassin. But the outcome made everyone stunned, because that diviner's spell actually failed. Even if the divination was magic-related and had a certain probability of failing, but surely catching a criminal shouldn't be hard, that wizard left the crime scene with an ashen face. Soon after, another wizard took his place. The outcome was still the same. As a result, this murder and arson case became the latest topic of discussion of Rivershore City. Everyone was guessing whose handiwork it was. But after a day, someone anonymously released an arrest warrant in every major guild for masked twin blades. Everyone then understood. The city hall surely knew something, but there wasn't any proof, so they could only use this kind of method to settle the problem. Masked twin blades' reputation spread far and wide in Rivershore City. Your achievements have been widely discussed. Territory Myth Level +1. Territory Myth Level, Masked Twin Blades, Rivershore City. With regards to masked twin blades myths spreading far and wide, you are already notorious in Rivershore City. Quite a lot of bounty hunters are sharpening their swords. Rivershore City and Jewel Bay merchants are also spreading this news. You are already quite infamous in the East Coast. Marvin looked at his infamy number and couldn't help but laugh. Myth level, this kind of thing, even if it was negative, it could still be useful sometimes. After killing Miller, Marvin didn't only succeed in getting revenge, he also completed the quest, obtaining 500 General EXP. After this battle, Marvin Battle EXP reached 1448 in one breath. With the 600 General EXP on top, he could level up again, reaching level 5 advanced rank. After reaching level 5 of a class, you could advance your class to advanced. Marvin hesitated before finally putting 2000 EXP into his ranger level up. Upgrading the player level to 5 would give a free attribute point, which he put onto dexterity. 20 dexterity. He completely got a hold of the special skill, anti-gravity steps. Thud, thud, thud. Knocks could be heard coming from the door. Marvin opened the door. It was Anna. "Is everything ready?" he asked. Anna nodded. Under Marvin's arrangements, all his guards had already been evacuated in small groups from Rivershore City. Rivershore City's defenses were quite tight, but also quite lax. There were always some unknown secret paths belonging to different kinds of people. Actually, Marvin had bought information on a secret escape route from the old goblin's place before the patrols rushed back from the docks yesterday night. After clearing away a corroding monster that once occupied the sewers in the northern part of the city, the patrols weren't attentive while making their rounds there anymore. As a result, That section had a tunnel with enough space for an adult man to enter or leave the city. Bain's Black Claw Chamber of Commerce controlled that path. He and Marvin worked together, and thus, they got Marvin's guards out of Rivershore City. They were carrying those light and convenient but expensive belongings and went back first to Green Village and the other places. Marvin and Anna wouldn't question their loyalty, especially under the leadership of Andre. The garrison wouldn't fight over those belongings. Doing it like that was too dangerous. Anna scolded Marvin. I know you hated him. He killed Old Lord and deserved it. But what if the wizards look into it? The half-elf butler was very worried. She personally brought Miro's daughter back home this morning. As a result, each major guild offered a bounty for masked twin blades this afternoon. Who posted it was quite obvious. After experiencing this, the families of the city hall's high officials were increased. Unlikely. Marvin faintly smiled. He didn't explain much. The people in this era were still revering wizards. They were after all the group that was ruling this world in this era. This was why Rivershore City had good public security, but that was already in the past. Marvin clearly remembered that all diviners lost their abilities 6 months before the Great Calamity. This was a sign, but the wizards did not pay attention. After all, divination had always been a bit tricky. The true reason was that the powerful god of time took a portion of the forbidden magic power in the universe magic pool. That part just happened to be connected to divination. The gods have already started their move. It is because of this that Marvin could be so bold. He knew that diviners couldn't find him. That was the reality. As for that City Hall high official Moreau, he wouldn't personally appear to help identify Marvin. The patrols moved because of his handwritten warrant. He couldn't appear as someone that neglected his duties. He would at most use some forces to secretly investigate and offer a bounty for masked twin blades. It's just that Marvin was somewhat surprised when he went looking for information in a tavern at noon. He actually heard that the patrols had grabbed a few evil cult followers of the docks. Apparently, they were secretly offering sacrifices to the plague god and met with those patrols as a result. Those guys were really out of luck. Of course, sending the patrols away to the docks was part of Marvin's plan. But who would have thought that they actually caught some evil followers? But this also reminded Marvin, whether it's the world-ending twin snakes or the plague god, believers, both have already began to be active in the south. This meant that the most chaotic era was on the verge of starting. He couldn't take a break now. He had to quickly recover White River Valley. But before that, he still had to act as the victim of the family. After all, following Miller's death, Marvin was his only blood relative. This meant that he would inherit Miller's possessions. But Marvin knew that even if the City Hall sent him a notification, the great majority of his inheritance would have been plundered by them, and he would only get the leftovers. These guys didn't overdo it. I thought they would casually find an excuse to say that Miller's home was completely plundered by thieves, only leaving me a box of ashes. Late afternoon, Marvin switched his clothes for a noble set. Seemed like it was time to turn back into a weak and incompetent young noble. He went to the city hall with Anna. As expected, the official in charge of the inheritance formalities only gave Marvin a deed, the deed of the house Miller bought in the wealthy District 31 plot. The rest of the pearls, belongings, and such things wasn't there. Sir Marvin, I'm sorry for your loss, said the official insincerely. Marvin feigned to be weak and asked, now that my uncle also died, my only blood relative died. When can Rivershore City send troops to help me clear that pack of gnolls? I need to get my territory back. That official still insincerely said, this is quite difficult. Sir Marvin, you see, evil cult followers have been roaming in Rivershore City, along with savage killers such as the one that killed your uncle's family, masked twin blades. We're severely lacking manpower. I think waiting patiently inside for the city a little while longer should be quite good. Marvin's face showed his disappointment. He inwardly felt somewhat startled. It's fair to say that after Miller's death, the bribed officials should have no reasons to not send troops to clean up that gnoll pack. After all, Rivershore City and White River Valley weren't too far away from each other. To have a pack of gnoll occupying the territory like that was a threat to Rivershore City. but these officials still avoided dealing with it. Could it be that someone else was paying attention to White River Valley, and not only Miller? Marvin was smart, and he was able to guess the possible causes behind that. But he didn't plan on relying on the strength of the River Shore City patrols. Asking like this was firstly the sensible thing to do, and secondly, a way to probe. It seemed that there were still some people who had intentions on River Shore City. Marvin took a quick glance at the quest menu and saw that the main quest hadn't changed. It was still, reclaim your territory. But he had 18 days remaining. Leaving the city hall, Marvin immediately planned his next step. After yesterday's murder and arson, followed by looting, Marvin had harvested a quite generous amount of wealth from Miller's home. The amount of riches was worth more than 100,000 silvers. Marvin's garrison left with almost a third of the easy to carry valuables. He sold the remainder to Bane of the Black Claw at low cost using the identity of masked twin blades. The old goblin was extremely crafty. He knew who to provoke and who to cooperate with. Marvin's body emitted a kind of very scary killing intent. So when he got the money, he actually got a pretty good price. Moreover, last night, he also understood that Marvin's two subordinates were both powerful phantom assassins. In their line of work, they were very clear on one point. They should never provoke an assassin. The old goblin expressed with enthusiasm that Sir Masked Twin Blades was the Black Claw's important business partner. Even if there was a warrant with a large bounty on his head, Marvin currently had about 50 golds in total. Converted into silvers, it was about 50,000 silvers. That money was enough for him to hire a party of adventurers. Here, 30,000 silvers. Marvin gave a pouch to Anna and solemnly said, "Go to the Adventurer Guild to pick some people. They must have an official class. Prioritize those with battle experience, those with leading experience, the fighters, and those who have their own weapons and armor. Get around 20. As for the monetary reward, do as you see fit." The half-elf nodded. He was quite confident in Anna's abilities. She would do her job of recruiting the adventurers just fine. He wanted to take back White River Valley, so he needed troops. Relying on his garrison wasn't enough. "Young Master Marvin, what about you?" Anna asked. "Me?" Marvin smiled. "I'll go check White River Valley first. Don't we need someone to scout?" The setting sun was illuminating to the top of East Coast Holy Light Tower. On the highest platform, a corpse was calmly lying next to a stooped old man. Even if the legendary wizard was in poor health, he was still quite strong. Even if he suffered a hard-to-predict sneak attack and was close to death, he still managed to kill this disciple controlled by the Twin Snakes cult. It's just that he was on the verge of dying. Even if the Shadow Prince was a weak god, he was a powerful legendary assassin before ascending to godhood. Anthony closed both eyes, his face covered with bruises. The voices coming from the Eye of the Bright Sun were in a mess, as if something was interfering. He also tried to contact other legendary wizards in the region, but an indescribable force field prevented it. This was a conspiracy. Anthony staggered his way to the edge of the platform. From this point of view, whether it was Sailboat City in the north or Jewel Bay in the south, it only took a glance to see them. Such a beautiful scenery. The old man calmly stood there and began to chant. 30 seconds later, his body fell from the platform, and a pitch-black cloud quickly formed in the sky. In a split second, all of the East Coast's kind-hearted living creatures suddenly felt an acute pain. A woman with weak willpower was also unable to restrain herself and cried. Everyone was looking toward the east, shock filling their eyes. A legend died. Nighttime, on the main road outside Rivershore City. Marvin was walking alone when he suddenly felt sorrowful. I was also able to feel that grief. Even though Anthony died as I expected, how could I feel sorrowful? Marvin stood motionless for a moment, slowly recovering. He was somewhat shocked. He wasn't shocked because of the grief. Ordinary people may not know what that grief meant, but he knew. As one of the few active legendary wizards alive, Anthony had always been the most active in suppressing evil powers and was also the strongest one. Regardless if it was the Twin Snakes cult or the lower planes' evil spirits, they couldn't do as they pleased because of Anthony's Eye of the Bright Sun. That righteous legendary wizard was East Coast Protector. He was also one of the highest members of the South Wizard Alliance. This kind of person couldn't be described with a few words. His death definitely was a loss for Feinan Continent, and the good people would feel some kind of power and feel some kind of grief. This was just the first one, because this was first legend's death since the Great Calamity started brewing. Under the gods' conspiracy, the deaths of mankind's wizards would definitely not be just a few. From Marvin memories of those shocking events, everything would happen one by one. It wouldn't be long before Anthony's death spread around, and at that time, all evil powers would begin to gain ground. It was the eve of the rise of the world-ending twin snakes, the plague god cult, the living puppets. Everything was just beginning. All of Feinan would sink into chaos. Wizards would lose their strength and be reduced to monsters. The mortals in their suffering would start to pray to the gods. This was the goal of those high and mighty gods. Of course, there was still the fourth fate tablet. Everything couldn't be stopped. The only thing Marvin could do was not to go against heaven, but rather set up a relatively safe place in this chaotic world. That was quite difficult, but as a former legendary player, Marvin never backed down from a challenge. Fate made him come to this world. He had to deal with the body's owner, so he had to achieve it. This was Marvin's pledge to the soul, and because of that, he needed to defend his territory with his life. Could it be that I'm also kind-hearted? Marvin gazed at the black cloud floating in the east, somewhat laughing at himself. Heavy rain would fall from that blackness for several days, and rainfall would hit all of the East Coast. This was a warning to the Feinan's people of the death of the legendary wizard Anthony. A disaster was approaching. Marvin adjusted his breath and took advantage of the darkness to accelerate. The main road was quite deserted. Very few people would walk alone at night. Also, this main road was actually built by the first lord of White River Valley, Marvin's grandfather. Obviously, there weren't many people taking that road. Ever since the fall of White River Valley, no caravan would go there. After all, who would do business with gnolls? Marvin's dark vision was quite poor, but luckily, the moon was out tonight. He was able to see quite far because of Mark of the Moon. He sped up his lonely journey, and because he didn't want to leave any traces, he decided to rest during the day and move out during the night. In the evening, 2 days later, he finally arrived at the border of White River Valley. Northern Mine. Strong winds blew on the grove of beech trees while the heavy rain was approaching. The main road ended here, splitting up in many narrow paths. Marvin used stealth to travel through the grove. He arrived in front of a crossroad and noticed a road sign. Marvin was quite familiar with this sign. It showed the way to the northern mine and the castle in the south. But right now, something was painted in green on top of it. A series of ugly-looking words replaced the original words. No language. Fuck. These beasts. Marvin clenched his teeth. Even if he wasn't very proficient in the language, he could still more or less guess that the words on the road sign meant Gnoll territory. Move one step further, and you would end up on the Gnoll's property. That's right, the attack on Marvin's castle was definitely from a Gnoll tribe, or else, considering the castle's defense, it wouldn't have fallen so quickly. It's just that, from that time of the night, with so much confusion, the innocent youth wasn't able to leave Marvin too much useful information. He had to personally investigate, but he already encountered a troublesome situation no further than the crossroad. There were Gnoll sentinels. They were common sentinels. 2 fighters and 2 archers carrying very rough weapons. One look was enough to figure out that they crafted them themselves. Skillful human weaponsmiths were able to make slingshot more powerful than Gnoll bows. He wasn't worried about those Gnoll sentinels. The important thing were those 6 tall shadows behind them. Marvin used Inspect, and his pupils couldn't help but constrict. Mutated Aardwolf Superscript 1. A level 4 beast with HP reaching 200 in melee, fighting ability comparable to fierce tigers. These mutated Aardwolves were the main force in the attack on the castle. The castle's defensive army tried to defend themselves with their shields, but those were easily ripped apart. Marvin himself was almost bitten to death by a mutated Aardwolf, if not for Anna saving him. Marvin knew that Gnolls could tame Aardwolves, but this kind of mutated Aardwolf wasn't the kind that Gnolls could usually tame. Could that pack of gnolls have a rare beast tamer? Marvin guessed. He was now facing a difficult problem. The road in front was blocked, and if he wanted to move ahead, he had to get rid of those sentinels. But he had come to scout this time, and not to alert his enemies. He needed to know the ins and outs of the gnoll tribe, their fighting forces, their leaders' level, and so on. This needed to be done quietly. These sentinels and aardwolves were hindering his path. This was quite troublesome. Marvin hesitated, and then finally crouched behind a beech tree and used stealth. Time to be patient. Marvin waited in the cold wind for 2 hours. The rainstorm started wildly falling from the sky. This was a spell cast by the legendary wizard Anthony before his death, using his own life to admonish Feinan's evil creatures. And as pointed out by Marvin, gnolls were very scared of rainwater. If their fur was drenched, it would be very difficult to dry it and would rot under the action of parasites. As a result, they would generally hide in any cavity they could find. And as expected, once it began to rain, those sentinels began to shriek and escaped to a cavity in the hill not too far from there. They were also followed by those 6 mutated aardwolves. Marvin was delighted. He used stealth and, under the cover of the rain, silently walked forward. After going through the first checkpoint, the rest of the road was smooth. Marvin stealthily went to the northern mine. He discovered that those gnolls were totally clueless about mining. After Marvin evacuated the miners, their defense only had around 20 fighter gnolls and 2 aardwolves. One of them seemed to be a level 3 officer. Seems like their leader put the main defensive forces at my castle. To have so many aardwolves, this is definitely a medium-sized tribe with 300 gnolls or more. No wonder that we were defeated that night. The destructive power of that kind of mutated aardwolf is too high. It would take second-rank human experts to be able to deal with them. Marvin put a reminder in his heart. He needed to deal with these aardwolves if he wanted to take back his territory. After all, they could just surround and cut ordinary the gnoll fighters into pieces. But right now, he was more interested in the one that bred those mutated aardwolves. Ordinary aardwolves were level 2 beasts, and normally one aardwolf would appear in community of 10 or more gnolls. To be able to train aardwolves to level 4, their master must be quite extraordinary. It might be a ranger advanced class, tamer? Marvin wasn't sure, but those mutated aardwolves' master was most likely the leader. That kind of powerful guy had no reason to not be the leader. He had been thinking for a long time, and the shadow of the castle in the valley could already been seen in the distance. Heavy rain kept pouring down, but Marvin didn't advance without thinking, as he knew of a secret entrance to the castle. However, the road there was quite slippery. One wrong step, and he would slip into the abyss. He needed to wait for the rain to subside. Therefore, he planned to go to the castle hill and look for a farmhouse that hadn't been occupied by the gnolls to temporarily live in. He cautiously avoided the patrolling gnolls' line of sight, picked a house that felt familiar, and rushed in. The house's owner should have evacuated to the countryside. Marvin would only live here temporarily, so it shouldn't be a problem. But shockingly, a shriek could be heard from the house's backyard. That was a girl's voice. After the girl's shriek, there was a rumble. Gnolls! Marvin shivered. He used sneak and quietly entered the backyard. A lady wearing expensive clothes was lying on the ground in the neighboring courtyard. She was surrounded by 6 gnolls who were saying something angrily. The rain had weakened into a drizzle. The young lady was frightened, and it looked like her life was in danger. It's her. But Marvin didn't act right away. He was startled because he recognized this woman. Prior to the gnoll invasion, this woman had come to his territory wearing luxurious clothes and spending money extravagantly. She had asked to establish a long-term business relationship with White River Valley. She claimed to be the daughter of the White Flag Chamber of Commerce from Jewel Bay. She also had 2 strong bodyguards with her. Marvin was almost convinced. White River Valley wasn't suited for agriculture. There was a shortage of cereals every year in the territory, and, as such, they needed to go out and buy some. But the price of cereals in Rivershore City Marketplace was quite expensive. Marvin had been annoyed with this issue ever since he took over the territory. And at that time, the young lady took advantage of the situation and offered to solve this issue for Marvin. She said she could move some cereals over from Jewel Bay, on the premise that Marvin gave an advance payment first. Even though that advance payment wasn't a lot, compared with White River Valley's critical finances, it was a huge amount of money. Being cautious, this body's former owner sent Anna on a trip to Jewel Bay to check the young lady's identity. He had let the girl live close by and pretended to hesitate while waiting for Anna's news. As a result, when a completely exhausted half-elf girl had come back 5 days later, she brought back the news that there was actually no white flag Chamber of Commerce. This girl was without a doubt a swindler. She and her 2 so-called bodyguards were caught on the spot and thrown into the castle prison. Even though Marvin didn't mistreat her, if he didn't punish her attempt to deceive the Lord, it would be quite difficult to keep any prestige in the territory. So she was sent to the prison, up until the Knoll invasion. How did she escape? And what about her 2 bodyguards? Marvin was pondering while looking at that girl speaking with those Knolls. This swindler girl, named Lola, had quite an original story, unexpectedly able to speak the Knoll language. The Knoll language was relatively simple, but because of their special vocal cords, even if other races wanted to emulate them, it would still be quite troublesome. But that girl was able to imitate the Knoll language. She was unexpectedly talented. Even if that kind of person was a swindler, she would also be useful at the right time. At that time, one of the Knolls suddenly grabbed the girl's clothes and put a Tonto superscript 1 on her neck. The discussion quickly sped up. The Knolls on the side were jeering one after the other, and a few even sent some saliva flying. I don't know how she tricked those Knolls into letting her out, but her current situation doesn't seem particularly nice. Time to play the hero, saving the beauty. Lola was extremely afraid. She normally had a very swift mind, but now she was completely lost. That damn noble. He threw her in the prison and fled on his own. She had almost become a meal when she was found by that group of Knolls. If not for her proficiency in the Knoll language, a flower would have already withered. But now, she had already managed to trick that pack of Knoll to release her with great difficulty. Unfortunately, she just failed her escape. Now, how could these angry Knolls listen to her attempt at appeasing them? They wanted to eat her. Thinking of that, Lola felt her limbs going soft. She almost cried. Lola, stay strong, stay strong. Don't cry. You can surely find a way out. So many years, no matter how difficult some places may have been, I'm still standing. The girl bit her lips, trying to calm down, but she instantly panicked when she saw the Tonto on her neck. A tear was forming at the corner of her eyes. The Knoll's fishy stench was closing in. She opened her mouth and said in a tone as smoothly as possible, "Listen, I really know where to find a precious mineral deposit." Plop! Blood splashed, and quite a lot of drops flew in Lola's mouth. She opened her mouth wide and blankly looked in front of her, at that Knoll leader whose head was separated from his body. A masked human-shaped shadow slowly appeared out of nowhere. A pitiful shriek was heard. The other Knolls were looking with shock at the human that had suddenly appeared before swarming him. Knolls, kobolds, goblins, and other similar creatures with inferior wisdom would just compare which side had more numbers when comparing their strength with their opponents. They had 5, and the humans only had 1.5. That girl obviously could only be counted as half. They counted, and their side would definitely win. Unfortunately, Marvin wasn't the average human. Level 5 Ranger, 20 Dexterity. Facing a second rank would be quite dangerous, but facing a group of Level 2 Knoll fighters was still quite easy. Whoosh! A cold light flickered, and 2 curved daggers flew in Marvin's hands. He nimbly traveled back and forth between the Knolls, his movements filled with self-confidence. Even though every single slash wasn't necessarily deadly, they were still crippling. Melee Ranger technique focused on targeting the other side's vitals, stabbing to kill. These Knolls weren't wearing any armor, only covered by rough fur that was unable to take on Marvin's continuous stabs with his curved daggers. In less than half a minute, the 5 Knolls were peacefully lying on the ground. Marvin calmly took out a black cleaning rag and wiped his twin daggers clean before putting them away. As for Lola, she had just managed to react. She bent over and started puking. 3 minutes later, inside the farmhouse. "Knoll blood smells quite fishy," Marvin calmly said. but you get used to it after puking several times. Blarg. Lola, who had just finished puking, couldn't help but retch again when she heard this sentence. Her face was a serious blue, and as she originally hadn't eaten much food in the prison, all that came out was bile. She only felt dizzy now, but she was still able to make good judgments. This was an expert, judging from the way he killed the gnolls. The other side was wearing a mask. Experts were all peculiar. But what if it was because he looked ugly? Lola thought of countless ideas in her head as she ended up saying pitifully, "Thank you for saving me. I am the daughter of the president of the White Flag Chamber of Commerce. I came to White River Valley to discuss business on behalf of the White Flag. But who would have thought that I would meet so many gnolls? I am extremely grateful for your help. If you could give me something to eat and then send me back to Jewel Bay, I would reward you handsomely." She used that kind of innocent gaze toward Marvin. To be fair, Lola's looks were quite good. A beautiful and bright pair of eyes, particularly deceptive. It's a pity that Marvin only threw her a piece of hard bread. "This is food." Because they were whispering, Marvin didn't want to say much, omitting the fact that he already knew the girl's true identity. "I saved you because you seem to be proficient in the Gnoll language. I have a use for your skill. Finish eating and take a nap. We are moving out tomorrow morning." Lola opened her eyes wide. Unfortunately, Marvin completely ignored her and took out his curved dagger instead before lightly wiping it clean. Her mind was simply falling apart. This was just getting away from the world of suffering from the gnolls to get into the hands of a demonic killer. Looking at him wiping the dagger. What was he thinking? He wouldn't pick a fight with those strong gnolls defending the castle, right? "I admit that you are quite skillful, but you are heavily outnumbered." Lola was eating the bread on the ground while crazily mocking him inwardly. After she finished the bread, it was nightfall already. She was trying to look for an opportunity to escape, but the masked expert hadn't given her any chance. "I'll give you a piece of advice if you want to escape. Run as if your life were on the line. If I catch you, the result will be a lot more frightening than those gnolls." Marvin then began to take a nap, half leaning on the edge of the door. Lola's heart turned cold. After seeing Marvin's skill, how could she dare to be rash? She didn't sleep well that night. The girl was afraid that this quiet assassin's inner beast would suddenly be unleashed and he would chop her up like he had done to the gnolls. Or even defile her. Wait a minute. Which of these two situations was worse? Lola was at a loss. Even when dawn had arrived, she still hadn't figured it out. At that time, Marvin opened both eyes and calmly said, "Awake? We have work to do." "Work? What do you mean working with my body?" Lola jumped, scared. She immediately had all kinds of bad thoughts. But Marvin didn't do anything weird. He only sat cross-legged in front of her and firmly said, "Tell me all the vocabulary and grammar of the Gnoll language you know. I'll only ask once." Lola blankly looked at him. She didn't think he would raise this kind of request. He just wanted to learn the Gnoll language. "Sir, forgive my offense," Lola timidly said. "Although the Gnoll language is simple, it's not a language you can learn quickly." Marvin didn't feel like saying much. He took out his curved dagger and put it on the side. "You talk. I listen." Lola wanted to cry, but no tears came out. She just had to be his Gnoll language teacher. Truly a single-minded bad guy. Even though she felt like that, she still forced herself to explain all her knowledge of the Gnoll language. Although the Gnoll language was relatively simple, it was still a language. It wasn't easy to master it. Lola's explanation of the small bits of the language that she knew took a bit more than 2 hours. She looked at Marvin warily. "Sir, I've already given you all my vocabulary. There isn't much more." Marvin remained motionless. Before long, his mouth uttered a very queer sound. Lola was shocked when she heard that sound. This sound meant food in the Gnoll language. How could this happen? I took more than a year to learn the Gnoll language, yet he is able to speak it after listening to me, speaking it for only 2 hours. Lola felt like she was dreaming. But next, Marvin began talking to her in the Gnoll language. "You did a good job. Definitely helped me. But I cannot let you leave now." He then stood up and used a rope to tie Lola to the bed. After leaving her a few pieces of bread, Marvin sealed the doors and the windows of the farmhouse and left alone. Lola was sitting on the bed with a blank stare as if she saw a ghost. She even forgot to resist. Although, it would have been futile to resist. Marvin did learn the Gnoll language, and it only took 2 hours. This seemed miraculous, but it was actually true. After getting rid of Miller, Marvin didn't only reach level 5 Ranger, he also took a look at his own original class. Nobility. This life class could also be promoted. Baron. This rank could let a noble reach level 4, and then it wouldn't get higher. Marvin surmised that he might need a higher nobility title. Marvin casually added 10 General EXP to the original 40 Nobility EXP to level it up. His noble class reached level 4. After reaching level 4, aside from the 20 noble special skill points, he also found out that he got an extra skill. Quick study, level 4 nobility specialty. When you activate this specialty, you can learn knowledge in a short time. Can be activated for 3 hours every month. As for the target of study, it could be any language, geography, culture, astronomy, etc. No language was included in that. It was because of his specialty that Marvin made Lola lecture him on no language. It was a success. You used a specialty, quick study. You are learning new knowledge. Study finished, knowledge +1. Knowledge, language, no language. You mastered the elementary no language. You were able to have the most basic conversation with gnolls. He had successfully learned the most basic no language. Even if it was only the lowest rank, it would still be enough to use. He was here to scout, so being unable to understand what Noel said wouldn't do. As such, nobility, this life class isn't worthless. I heard that the Pearl Tower scholars have similar skills. They can quickly learn knowledge thanks to a few skills. I didn't expect nobility to have this kind of skill. However, based on Marvin's conjecture, this kind of ability wouldn't appear 100% of the time and was decided at birth. Nobles in this world were all wizards or their descendants. They had outstanding blood flowing in their veins. This let them have a chance of learning some unusual specialties when they leveled up as nobility. And quick study was a very useful one. Marvin no longer hesitated after he settled the matter of the Gnoll language. Under the cover of the drizzle, he checked around the bottom of the castle's east mountain wall. There was a secret escape path there. The secret path led directly to the Lord's room under the bed. During the sneak attack, Marvin was having a meal in the dining room, so he wasn't able to use the secret path. As a result, this secret path probably hadn't been exposed. Marvin took advantage of stealth and clever movements to stay out of sight of the Gnoll sentries in the castle before parting a thick bush. He lifted open a plank from under the sunken grass pile, exposing the secret path in front of him. Marvin's torch was inside the void conch, so even though it was raining, once he got inside the secret path, he was able to use a flint and light his torch. The torch flames were very bright, and the quality of air inside the secret path seemed quite good. Marvin closed the plank and then went along using a sneaky, cat-like walk. The humidity was different. It was very dry inside the tunnel. Even though there was a lot of dust, the completely soaked Marvin still felt a lot more comfortable. He quickly made his way forward by relying on his memories of the path. There was a fork in front of him. According to his memories, there was a staircase on the left path leading to the exit. The right path was sealed. A huge rock blocked the path, hiding the other side. Marvin suddenly remembered that before Miller's death, he had mentioned a secret path below the castle having a treasure. Could it be behind this huge rock? Marvin was puzzled. He wasn't very anxious, as even if there was a treasure, it wouldn't escape on its own. He still had to finish scouting first and leave it for later. Scouting was decisive in winning a battle, because having enough information could give you victory. Marvin wouldn't feel reassured if anyone else did this job, so he could only do it himself. He followed the secret path very carefully, arriving to the Lord's room. There were no voices, so it seemed his luck was pretty good. Marvin infiltrated the castle and used stealth, being extremely careful at every step. Gnoll shadows began appearing one after the other in the castle surroundings. The more he looked, the more alarmed he felt. These gnolls weren't fighters. They were only common gnolls without any fighting strength, and for the most part, old weak women and children. There were more than 200 of those gnolls. This meant that it was a medium-sized gnoll tribe. They should have about 150 gnolls with real combat classes. This wasn't an amount that a 20-man garrison could deal with, let alone all those mutated Aardwolves. He walked around the castle very carefully. Fortunately, he was very familiar with the terrain, and the gnolls had pretty poor perception. He was able to calmly withdraw. But what made him somewhat puzzled was that he had met the majority of the gnoll tribe forces, but still wasn't able to find the boss. The gnoll tribe roughly had 150 qualified as fighters. Among them were 6 level 3 petty officers and 2 level 4 adjutants. The leader was definitely a rank 2 class holder. Marvin noticed that those mutated Aardwolves didn't listen to the ordinary gnolls or even to the adjutants. They seemed to be controlled by someone even more powerful. Their leader, what is it? Harboring doubts in his heart, Marvin clenched his teeth and wanted to go further in. But at that time, on a street not far from there, a group of gnolls were escorting a thin and small guy. Marvin narrowed his eyes and was immediately startled. Gnolls were normally small enough, but that guy was especially abnormal. It looked as small as a 5 or 6 years old child. His fur and color was actually very smooth, and the rest of the gnolls looked at him with eyes filled with respect. Oh my God, am I mistaken? The gnoll race, widely known for being dumb as fuck, actually gave birth to a sorcerer? Marvin's quick judgment told him to quickly get out of there. The most basic innate sorcerer spell, Eye of Pain, was the bane of all stealth techniques. He was alone in enemy territory. He couldn't stay there. Inside the tunnel, Marvin started to relax, his heart still beating fast. Almost got found out. Luckily, there were tall gnolls on his side obstructing his line of sight. If he had found me, I would have been in trouble. There are so many gnolls and mutated Aardwolves that even if I used hide, I wouldn't be able to escape. Marvin was really scared this time. He hadn't anticipated that a sorcerer would be born among the gnolls. They weren't kobolds, which had the blood of their ancestor, a huge dragon, flowing in their veins. So, how could a sorcerer, this kind of outstanding class, appear in a gnoll pack? Marvin was unable to understand. But Feinan's world was full of extraordinary things. Since that pack of gnolls had a second-rank sorcerer leading them, their danger level went up. Marvin would have to issue a specialized target. Only then would it be possible to win. After all, a strong sorcerer supporting his strong allies in the battlefield was extremely powerful. Because the sorcerer class was limited by bloodlines, it had always been considered as a second-rate class. However, after the Great Calamity, because their spells were unrelated to the universe magic pool, and because of the chaos magic flowing in Feinan, instead of being negatively affected, their spells became easier to cast and stronger. After the Great Calamity, sorcerers were the group that benefited the most. Marvin remembered that in the surroundings of the Rocky Mountain to the southwest, the group of sorcerers exiled by the wizards successfully established a large country after the Great Calamity. Even though the country only stood for less than 3 years, if it wasn't for a few gods targeting it, it might have conquered the south. The leaders of the country were in fact 3 heavenly awakened sorcerers. The players talked about the 3 Fate Sisters, all extremely beautiful. This gnoll sorcerer that Marvin encountered in White River Valley naturally couldn't compare with the strongest heavenly awakened sorcerer, but he still couldn't underestimate it. He noticed that the other side was constantly using Eye of Pain, meaning that he was very alert. It also showed that his magic power was very strong. Eye of Pain continuously consumed energy, but he was able to stand up straight, showing that his bloodline was quite strong. This kind of guy was the nemesis of stealth users like Marvin. If Marvin was a thief, he would be ruined. Fortunately, he wasn't. The Ranger's advantage was that even if stealth was restrained, the close-range abilities were still impressive. Marvin rested for a moment in the tunnel, and soon afterwards he was ready to go back. When he passed by the fork, he suddenly heard a faint singing voice behind that huge rock blocking the path. That voice was very gentle. If not for the fact that Marvin's hearing was extraordinary, along with the quiet secret path, he wouldn't have been able to hear it. What? Marvin's heart raced. He quickly approached and stuck his ear to the stone. The voice gradually turned clear. It seemed to be using a very old language to sing. Marvin carefully listened for a moment, before noticing that this was the language of the Ans people. The Ans were a race that had already died out. They were the origin of the wizards, but they disappeared in the long river of history. In general, many places in Feinan had descendants of the Ans. During significant occasions, such as funerals, paying respects to gods or ancestors, and other similar occasions, there would be elders in charge of praying in the Ans language. But the average person wouldn't be able to speak or understand the Ans' ancient language. But Marvin understood. He checked his nobility class knowledge and surprisingly found Ans' language. He suddenly felt that the nobility class was simply 1,000 times better than the civilian class. It came with horsemanship, accounting, and other practical abilities, and it was unexpectedly still proficient in all kinds of rare languages. In the game, only a small amount of players checked the nobility class, and Marvin had no interest whatsoever towards it. As a result, he didn't know its secrets. This time, he got in a noble body and was finally able to experience the benefits of this class. He listened carefully and found out that that voice was androgynous and was singing only 4 sentences. 1 flower, 2 flowers, tonight the devil won't return home. Hating the rain falling, hating the thunder rumbling, I sit in the well, weeping. Dressed in white for a celebration, dressed in black for a funeral, midnight bell has yet to stop ringing. The deceased has yet to die. The voice was extremely scary. The more he listened to it, the more scared he was. Those 4 sung lines kept echoing in his brain for a very long time. He suddenly forced himself to move away. As voice gradually became quieter, he took a look behind. There is something inside. Just now, that scary voice managed to completely scare the usually extremely daring Marvin. That kind of indescribable feeling. Could be a fear skill. Marvin frowned and checked the logs but didn't find any fear check or anything similar. Furthermore, he was wearing Vanessa's gift, which increased his fear resistance by 10 points. Ordinary fear magics wouldn't work on him, but that frightening feeling actually came from the bottom of his heart. It wasn't a fear skill, but this voice felt as if it was causing some kind of resonance inside his blood vessels. Is there a treasure or a monster inside? Marvin looked at the stone behind him with a pale face. He ultimately raised his spirits and threw this matter to the back of his head for the time being. He had to focus his energy. He couldn't be distracted by these things. The strange singing voice would have to wait until he recovered White River Valley. Marvin quickly got out of the secret path and returned inside the farmhouse of panicked and still tied up Lola. What do you want to do? The girl became extremely scared. She had sat in thought there for quite a while, feeling sure that this vicious guy wouldn't let her off. That guy, how'll he take care of me? Using my body first and then death? Or would I be treated the same as those gnolls, just a slash and it's over? Lola had thought a lot. The more she thought, the less she was able to accept it. No matter how bad she was still better than the gnolls, right? It's probably going to be the first. As she thought of this, she became even more scared. As a result, when Marvin untied her, she broke out into an unprecedented struggle, which was quickly restrained by Marvin. Keep moving and you'll die, Marvin said in an ice-cold voice while putting his curved dagger on her neck. His tone was cold, probably because he was still suffering from the influence of the singing voice. Lola was scared and started shivering, her recently found courage disappearing in an instant. I guess I was born under an ill star. She simply closed her eyes, awaiting her fate. How could she have expected that at that time? Marvin would instead ask her, baffled, "What are you doing?" "Ah." Lola opened her eyes, clueless. Marvin said softly, "Get ready. I'll get you through the knoll perimeter." If it was Marvin alone, passing through the knoll perimeter would be extremely easy. But taking a burden along was a lot more troublesome. Lola didn't have any class abilities, so not only was she unable to help him, she was also lagging behind. Fortunately, Marvin thought of a way. He lured away the Ardwolves guarding some key areas and then dragged Lola out of White River Valley. 3 days later, when Lola stood once more in front of Rivershore City, she was overjoyed. Finally back to the civilization. She had gone through some hard times from those filthy gnolls in the White River Valley dungeons. She could have been swallowed whole, fried, or even steamed. Not everyone had the chance to experience this. Lola felt happy to have survived and almost cried. "Thank you. Thank you very much." She sincerely thanked Marvin. Even if the guy before her eyes was extremely fierce, he didn't seem as bad as she imagined. Still wearing his mask, Marvin was whispering something, hesitating. He then suddenly asked, "You know the path to Jewel Bay?" "Ah." Lola was startled. "I know you aren't a Chamber of Commerce leader's daughter. I also know that you are only a swindler. But I decided to give you a change." Marvin took out a pouch and gave it to Lola. "There's some money inside. Enough for you to make a trip to Jewel Bay and back and still have some left over. You can use it to hire some manpower to protect you or bribe a few people. I need you to do something for me." Lola looked at Marvin startled. "You know about me?" She looked at him suspiciously. "Did the White River Valley Lord tell you? Are you one of his men?" Lola was racking her brain. Marvin didn't explain. "Almost. Why do you trust me?" Lola took that money pouch, mixed feelings filling her heart. "I merely think that you haven't found yourself yet, that you didn't want to become a swindler." Marvin lightly added, "Perhaps you aren't so bad. I want to give you a chance." Marvin parted with Lola outside Rivershore City. He wanted to give Lola a chance to change because she displayed some talent. Even if she was a swindler, she might become useful with a bit of training. Someday in the future, Marvin might not be able to everything himself. He might need some talented people to help him manage his territory. And Lola had this kind of aptitude. Even if Lola took the money and ran, Marvin's losses would only be a bit of money. And if Lola brought back good intel from Jewel Bay, then she would have passed Marvin's first test. At that time, White River Valley should already have returned to Marvin's hands. "Don't disappoint me." Marvin looked at the girl's figure disappearing into the woods. He then finally took off his mask before walking into the city. Rivershore City seemed as peaceful as usual, but this calm was only a camouflage. While Marvin was walking down the streets, he could see the fear and worry in the eyes of the civilians. There were a lot more soldiers patrolling. When he was going through the city gate defenses, they asked more questions than usual. After all, the news of the legendary wizard Anthony had already spread through the East Coast. This powerful person whose strength was protecting the peace of East Coast all along. The people hadn't even finished mourning their protector's disappearance when the Twin Snakes cult people came out and did something ruthless. They used a small village as a blood sacrifice. Women, old people, youths, they were all skinned to make a skin kite that was hung outside the village. Even if that was in the vicinity of Sailboat City and far from Jewel Bay, people were still afraid. After being suppressed for many years, the Twin Snakes cult was finally unable to hold back their ambitions. And the worst part was that rumors about wizards beginning to lose magic power began spreading in the streets. The diviners were already unable to use magic. The fact that Miller's family slaughter, which was the talk of the town, had not been solved was clear proof. The city lord hadn't shown his face in a while, and neither had the wizard regiment's chief. The city hall could only send more patrols. These patrols could appease the civilians for the time being, but they couldn't stop the attacks of the Twin Snakes and other evil followers. Rivershore City and even the entire East Coast were in an unstable situation. It was said that all kinds of thieves' silhouettes could be seen on the main road. This was a warning sign of the chaos that would fall across this world. Marvin was walking in the street as chill winds were blowing around. He couldn't help but pull on his clothes and walk with steady steps. Ranger Guild, a young man covered in dust and wearing a mask, came in. A few employees took a glance at him from their counter before losing interest. This guy seemed to be just a first-rank ranger, so it shouldn't be important business. But surprisingly, that guy quickly walked to one counter and knocked on the small table. "I need an appraiser," Marvin said in a rough voice. The sleepy girl behind the counter yawned. "What do you need appraised?" "I'm also an appraiser, and I quickly reached advanced appraiser level." "You won't be able to." Marvin shook his head. "I need a master level appraiser." "What?" The girl was startled. "Master level? What kind of thing need a master level appraiser to personally identify it?" She looked at Marvin suspiciously. "Are you sure? I can identify some things." It's related to ancient goblin knowledge and also compound potion knowledge. Marvin went straight to the point. The girl suddenly froze in place. She hadn't mastered these two types of knowledge. Only master-level appraisers had the chance to know about those two. Please wait a moment. Our guild only has one master-level appraiser. The girl added, somewhat embarrassed, but he is sleeping at the moment. No worries, I can wait. Marvin picked a place to sit. The girl curiously checked him out and couldn't help but ask, do you know the fees of a master-level appraiser? Marvin nodded, 500 silvers. You really have that much money? The girl had a whole new level of respect toward Marvin. This seemingly thin and weak guy who wasn't carrying many things actually had that much money. Marvin sized up the girl and suddenly asked, you are still an apprentice? The girl nodded. I am a disciple of Master Cole. Seems like you aren't the only disciple of Master Cole, Marvin said. His eyesight was quite acute. This girl was sensitive to money. She was wearing plain clothes, and one look was enough to know that her family's financial situation wasn't that good. But she seemed smart. If Master Cole thought she was important, she wouldn't end up with a job at the counter. The appraiser class needed to use a lot of money in the early stages, so being able to reach an advanced level appraiser when coming from a poor family wasn't bad. The girl was actually quite honest and nodded. I am Hathaway, Master Cole's 27th disciple. How long have you been an apprentice? Marvin bluntly asked. Probably 3 months, give or take. Hathaway seriously answered Marvin's question. Have you been hired? The exact time wasn't that important. Marvin simply tried to get what he could. He didn't expect that Hathaway would actually shake her head. The world is a harsh place, sir. Originally, a person in charge of a chamber of commerce in Sailboat City invited me to go to Sailboat City to be their appraiser. But he then died on the road. He got skinned. I heard it was the work of a Twin Snakes follower. Fear was apparent in Hathaway's eyes. Who would dare to go out now? I'd rather be a clerk in Rivershore City. I don't want to meet one of those evil follower. I'm very sorry. Marvin soothed her. It might get better soon. Hathaway shook her head, clearly taking Marvin's sentence as a stranger's kindness. But actually, Marvin was really thinking of hiring an appraiser. Even if she was only at advanced level, he could slowly train her. Even if White River Valley had yet to be recovered, Marvin had already begun to think of what to do after the seizing it back. In this world, there was a very potent yet hard-to-control power. It was the adventurers. If Marvin wanted to quickly strengthen White River Valley, he needed their help. That was why he was working hard. Having no appraiser in the territory won't do. He chatted idly with Hathaway for a while. After no less than an hour, Master Cole appeared. In the Ranger Guild's VIP lounge, Marvin was sitting on the far end of the table, while Hathaway was cautiously standing to the side. Deepwater Gem. Master Cole put down his magnifying glass and rubbed his eyes. Boy, you are extremely lucky. This thing has deadly power in the hands of a wizard smith. It is said to be the main material to build a mechanical ghost statue. Without the Deepwater Gem, the dexterity of the mechanical ghost statue would be reduced. A Deepwater Gem with this kind of purity could be processed into at least 8 subgems, and then used to make mechanical ghost statues. The South Wizards Alliance should have the mechanical ghost statue blueprint. You should sell this thing to them. It could be worth a lot. Marvin calmly nodded and put the gem away. He already knew that this gem was very expensive. He just didn't expect it to be worth that much. If it really was a Deepwater Gem, Marvin knew that wizards focused in clay transmutation would pay quite a lot for it, because it had another function apart from making mechanical ghost statues, which was strengthening spellcasting. This information was almost unknown, as only a few talented wizards had found out. But right now in Feinan's world, only a wizard could find out about wizard stuff. The others, including appraising masters, were unfamiliar with the field. Marvin was no doubt an exception. He took out another item that needed to be identified. It was that potion bottle he had gotten from the Crimson Monastery. He could only rely on his rich experience to recognize that this thing was a compound potion. He didn't know if this master appraiser could give him the answer. Cole took the potion with an extremely grave expression. Appraising potions was always the most troublesome part. 5 wizard golds, Cole said. Fixed price. Because I need to ask a friend proficient in potions to work with me. And he is actually a true wizard apprentice. Marvin decisively responded, no problem. It was already night when Marvin came out of the Ranger Guild 2 hours later. He had spent 5,500 silvers on the appraisals, but he didn't feel bad about it. A deep water gem, that's fine. And then the appraisal of that potion, it was actually a dragon superscript 1 strength. In Feinan world, anything related to a dragon was amazing. As the existence at the top of the food chain, every dragon had massively destructive power. For a legendary level or lower, getting rid of a dragon was extremely difficult. And even if the dragon strength potion didn't have anything to do with a dragon, it still had the dragon name. This meant that it wasn't ordinary. This kind of potion descriptor was in fact a generic term in the medicine ranking system. Taking this potion could temporarily increase his attributes substantially. It could definitely make the difference at a crucial time of a fight. Under the conscientious appraisal of Master Cole and that wizard apprentice, Marvin's 5 gold coins weren't wasted. He got the potion's description. Dragon strength, strength +6, dexterity +4. Last 10 minutes. These kinds of attributes were nearly unmatched. Marvin couldn't imagine how fierce he could be after drinking it. His strength was relatively weak at only 11, but it would reach 17 after drinking the dragon strength potion. This was close to second-rank fighter standards. Furthermore, there was also a 4 dexterity increase. Having 24 dexterity meant that he would be able to move as he pleased in the sky above and the earth below. This potion was a priceless treasure. Fortunately, the Ranger Guild still had some integrity. Master Cole and that apprentice wizard had appraised a lot of similar medicines together. Up until he left, Marvin didn't sense any malicious attention from them. That was the reason why Marvin picked the Ranger Guild, as major organizations weren't too messy. If it was Goblin Bane, they also have an appraiser over there, but would he be able to not have any evil plans when seeing such treasures? Blackhorn Eagle Inn. A list of names was handed to Marvin. Only 15 people. Marvin was somewhat surprised. He had given Anna instructions to recruit about 20 people. The fees of high-level adventurers are too high, and the highest of the lower level were only there to cheat us of our money. We don't need them. These 15 are more or less what we need. Moreover, the idea that the more the better doesn't really apply to adventurers, Anna added. Even if they all sign a contract, if our strength is weaker, we might not be able to suppress them. Marvin nodded, understanding Anna's worries. Relying on these adventurers to recapture White River Valley? It could actually end up being ruled by those adventurers. The garrison strength was somewhat weak, so if they recruited too many adventurers and let them form a force, this could end up unfavorably for Marvin. The butler girl had thoroughly analyzed the situation. However, the Knolls have a sorcerer. Marvin said, What? Anna was shocked. A sorcerer? How could this be? I saw myself. He almost discovered me. Marvin forced a rare smile. They also have a type of mutated aardwolves. Extremely hard to deal with. As for those Knoll fighters, they aren't much of an issue. 150 Knoll fighters might sound like a lot, but human adventurers' levels were higher than theirs. For one adventurer, to fight 2 or 3 wouldn't be a problem. As long as they could get rid of the leader, their morale would go down. But that crafty sorcerer would surely hide in a corner during the fight, not found by anyone. Those mutated aardwolves were under his control. He needed to find a way to subdue those aardwolves or eliminate that sorcerer. Or else it would be quite difficult to win. About those aardwolves, when they raided us, I killed one. Anna frowned and seriously said her opinion. They don't have any vitals. My sword pierced their heart and they wouldn't die. This kind of... Marvin hadn't fought with mutated aardwolves, so he knew very little about them. These things are really hard to get rid of. A large body, high speed, great destructive power, and no weak points. If a few were killed by those aardwolves, it would be fine on the garrison side, but the adventurers might get crushed. As Marvin was thinking, he grabbed a sheet of paper and wrote something down. Anna calmly stood to the side, looking more and more surprised at Marvin skillfully writing. Young Master Marvin is a genius. He already found 3 ways to restrain those aardwolves in such a short time. It seems like that misfortune actually awakened his potential. Will his strong and wise side be forced out? Anna was deep in thought. Yes, let's go with this. We will set off 3 days later, said Marvin firmly. But what about that sorcerer? Anna asked, worried. Even if sorcerer spells weren't as strong as those of wizards, it was still a powerful class. I'll take care of it. Marvin picked up the list of names of the adventurers and read it meticulously. There were 15 adventurers separated into 2 small teams of 6 and 3 solo guys. The 15 were all first-rank adventurers with no advanced class. Anna wasn't wrong. Even if Marvin had money now, high-level adventurers cost too much. It wasn't worth it. And if a guy too strong joined, Marvin might actually have his leadership threatened. What made Marvin surprised was that one of the 6-man teams was relatively well-known in Rivershore City. Bramble. This Bramble team has quite a bit of fame in the low-level adventurers circle. Their captain is a level 5 fighter. Marvin's gaze briefly stopped on the names of the Bramble members, as if he was taking notes. Seems like we have good luck, Anna promptly responded. Normally, based on the Bramble's strength, the contract fees should be insufficient to hire this experienced team. But it turns out that their boss daughter contracted some kind of strange illness, and they need a high-level priest to save her. They are in urgent need of money, and there are no big contracts lately. So, as a result, they took ours. This team sounded a bit trustworthy. Marvin nodded. Anna's efforts could be seen in that list of 15 people. The other 6-man team also had sufficient strength and reasonable equipment. Although they were a relatively new team, according to the records, their mission completion rate was very high. As for the 3 solo guys, they were quite strong. One was a level 4 ranger proficient with the bow, one was a level 5 druid able to shape-shift into a brown bear, and the last was a rarely seen pugilist. All of them had a bit of fame in Rivershore City. According to Marvin's calculations, the portion of the fees for the 3 solo adventurers was actually the highest. There is no problem with that list of names. We will set off 3 days later. Notify Andre and the others to make their preparations. Marvin made his decision. 3 days later, they would recover White River Valley. Where should we regroup? Anna asked. Night Tide Inn, replied Marvin, indicating a surprising location. When I came back, I found out that small family inn was still open. Gather there. You command this operation. I won't go. Anna was surprised. You won't go? She was astonished. Marvin smiled. I definitely can't, since I'm a weak and powerless noble. But masked twin blades can. Anna relaxed and displayed a knowing smile. Young Master Marvin didn't conceal it from her. This was the happiest thing to her. 3 days later, in an area outside of Rivershore City's rule, Night Tide Inn. This small family inn in decline was actually only made by an old crippled farmer who built a house in the surroundings to provide a place to rest. After White River Valley fell into the hands of the Knolls, there was almost no one using the main road between White River Valley and Rivershore City. But Night Tide Inn was still open. The old cripple didn't have anything else to do. As for moving, he didn't even think about it. He would only consider it if that group of wretched Knolls came over. But he knew that they wouldn't dare. This was Rivershore City territory, and that group of Knolls wouldn't dare kill here. They would be eliminated by Rivershore patrols. But tonight, Night Tide Inn welcomed a lot of guests. His inn could only fit 20 people at most, but tonight there were actually 36 people, and among them was a woman. But that cripple actually recognized that woman. She was White River Valley's butler. He hurriedly left the room. Entertaining these 30 guests actually made him a little happy. But when he planned to go in the kitchen, he heard sounds of struggle coming from the living room. Terrible. They won't cut down my family tapestry, will they? The old cripple's heart sank as he went to check. That was a group of undisciplined adventurers. Something must be happening. He hurriedly put down the pile of steamed buns and limped toward the living room. In the living room, 30 or so people were split into multiple factions, standing opposite of each other. They seemed ready to fight. Adventurers had always been lawless, but they were rarely untrustworthy, because most adventurers relied on their fame to make a living. Even if the means of communication were rather undeveloped in this world, there were very few adventurers that would breach the most basic rules. Abruptly asking for a raise before the fight even began, for example. Anna was angrily looking at that group of 6. White River Valley's garrison of 20 already gathered behind her. Andre's face was also red, and if it weren't for Anna stopping him, he would have already argued with these adventurers. The other 9 adventurers, the Bramble team, and those 3 solo guys, chose to watch. They seemed to be following the rules. But Anna knew that if she was unable to restrain the other small team, she would have to compromise. In that case, they would also request a raise. This was reasonable. We already discussed the contract. Anna tried to stay as calm as possible when talking to them. You already signed it. You would lose reputation if you breached the contract. That troublemaking group was the second team along the Bramble team. That team rose up in the past half year, but they still had a decent reputation as they had completed a lot of missions. Anna was extremely angry. They suddenly wanted to alter the contract and get a bigger reward, and twice the amount on top of that. This was unimaginable. Low-level adventurers wouldn't do something like this. Anna was not an idiot. She already felt that there was something wrong. The purpose of that adventurer team wasn't that simple. Seems like they want to slow down this operation. Anna felt it from this Lynx team's leader eyes. Could there be someone operating in the shadows, deliberately making them accept our task, and then breaking the contract and not doing it, influencing White River Valley's recovery? Anna was thinking, Miss Anna, our Lynx team is trustworthy. Lynx team's leader was a ranger with serious albinism, and his looks were extremely bad, but his skills were quite exceptional. That guy was called Vern, but everyone called him Cat. He was the leader of the entire Lynx team. He narrowed his eyes and calmly said, We didn't have any objections toward the previous contract. Then why do you want to breach the contract? Anna coldly asked. Because we recently learned that the contract was actually unreasonable, said Cat. A friend came to me with some information. He said that there was a sorcerer in the pack of gnolls occupying White River Valley. Doubling the reward when dealing with a caster is quite normal, right, Miss Anna? Thus, I suggest that we cancel the previous contract and sign a new one. Anna angrily said, Impossible. Cat narrowed his eyes. The living room atmosphere turned stiff. At that time, Bramble Team's captain started to talk, and if there's a caster, redoing the contract is the general rule. However, I do not know if this information is verified, so the Bramble Team won't pick a side for the time being. My only requirement is that my team pay would also be doubled if Lynx team pay is doubled. Is this fine? The other 3 adventurers had the same stance. If Lynx's team fees doubled, their own pay should also be increased. Else it wouldn't be enough to motivate them. Anna took a deep breath. A smile suddenly appeared on her face. In fact, even if she was annoyed when the Lynx team asked for a raise, she wasn't surprised. Young Lord had already guessed it would happen. Marvin had guessed earlier that an adventurer might use this opportunity to cause troubles. The Lynx team and the Bramble team were both good teams. If the Bramble team's motive was their leader's child falling ill, they couldn't help but take this contract. But what was the reason for the newly rising Lynx team? Marvin thought of this and made ample preparations. Thinking of it, she said, That's right, there's a sorcerer in that pack of gnolls occupying White River Valley. And it's a level 2 sorcerer. The Lynx team couldn't help but show a proud smile. This woman is compromising. Cat's pupils were still dilated, and few people could understand what he was thinking from his expression. Since that is the case, let's discuss our new contract, shall we? As he was talking, he sneered inwardly. New contract? We didn't take this mission for the money. In the process of drafting a new contract, they had to return to Rivershore City. This would take a lot of time. That sir told them that they just had to do that, and they would get a huge amount of money without doing anything. A smiling expression could be seen in Cat's eyes. New contract. Anna coldly laughed. Sorry, we don't plan on signing a new contract. If your Lynx team wants to do a breach of contract, you'll have to pay the penalty fee. What? Everyone in the Lynx team was shocked. She is actually keeping up an unyielding attitude. Even the Bramble team captain couldn't help but stand up and say, Miss Anna, if there is a sorcerer, the mission difficulty increased substantially. I think it's necessary to rediscuss it. He didn't want to cause troubles, but as a leader, he had to take responsibility for his own subordinates' lives. As an experienced adventurer, he knew that casters were difficult to deal with, even if it was a gnoll. Anna said, "It's like this. The gnoll's leader is indeed a sorcerer, but we invited an expert to deal with this sorcerer. Everyone would receive their commission only to clear up the other gnolls. That's all." An expert? Cat suddenly had a bad feeling. This was far from what he had expected. At that time, a thin silhouette slowly approached. He was wearing a thick mask, twin daggers on his belt. "Sorry, I'm late," Marvin said in a deep voice. Masked twin blades. The atmosphere in the living room immediately turned violent. Marvin calmly stood there, silent, yet intimidating. The adventurers stood up one by one, looking grave. They were all first-rank adventurers. They obviously knew that Masked Twin Blades, who was capable of eliminating the Acheron gang, was a lot more terrifying. Acheron gang's leader was in fact a true second-rank expert, and he was also linked to the Miller family elimination, killing in a wealthy district who knew how difficult this was. But this guy astonishingly had accomplished it. That Masked Twin Blades already turned into an influential figure in Rivershore City. Marvin didn't say anything. Anna coldly said, "That sorcerer will be Masked Twin Blades' target. You'll handle the other gnolls. Do you still have a problem with the contract?" Anna stared at Cat, her tone quite overbearing. The Lynx team was left speechless. They thought that excuse was the best excuse. But the appearance of Masked Twin Blades ruined everything. Cat was sweating, thinking hard. Someone put a high price on your head. At that time, one of the solo adventurers was pondering, "You still dare to move with us?" It was that boxer. He had a sturdy build and was armed with knuckles and seemed extremely fierce. His nickname was The Rock. It didn't mean that he had an amazing defense. It was because no matter how hard the stone was, he could shatter it. "Try me." Marvin didn't just target him. He checked everyone. He looked at the few members of the Lynx team for a bit longer. The mood turned ice cold. This being the case, our Bramble team doesn't have any objection. The Bramble team leader took the lead and said, "Since we aren't dealing with the caster, the price on the contract is quite fair." He glanced at Marvin and added, "Also, we aren't interested in your head, sir. We only want to finish the mission." "I have an objection." Seeing the Bramble captain taking his stance, Cat couldn't sit still. He sneered. Can he handle a second-rank sorcerer? If he failed to succeed, wouldn't we have to face a second-rank sorcerer? The pugilist Rock also displayed an evil smile. "Yes, Masked Twin Blade's reputation is really great, but what about his strength?" His tone suddenly changed. "Sir Vern, wouldn't it be better to have your people check it? I heard that your team's Mr. Green is also a dagger user. It would be better to let them compare notes and check Mr. Masked Twin Blade's strength, to see if it's as good as in the rumors." Hearing Rock, Cat inwardly cursed. This guy was clearly trying to take advantage, egging on Cat's people to see if he could get any benefits. This rough-looking pugilist was actually very resourceful. Anna coldly watched this nonsense. The only thing about this that satisfied her was that after Bramble's captain took his stance, the Bramble members stood away, meaning that they had no objection to the contract. But they didn't leave and just stood there, apparently wanting to look at the performance. After all, everyone was curious about how strong Masked Twin Blades was, having suddenly risen to fame. Cat was helpless. As if he retreated now, that person's plans would definitely be spoiled. The penalty fees was a large amount of money, and although that person's compensation was enough to cover it, it would still be a loss of reputation. This wasn't worth it. If they could smoothly destroy the White River Valley's recovery plan, it would definitely be the best. It really wasn't good, but they could only try to benefit as much from the situation as possible. After all, they were adventurers and not that person's subordinates. "Green?" Cat asked. A silent brown-haired guy stepped forward when his leader called. He was wearing a fine set of leather armor, but unlike Marvin, he was carrying a long saber. That long saber was a little similar to Japan's katana, but wider and thicker. This meant that it would result in a stronger slashing force when attacking a monster. Green was a cold-blooded blade master. Countless monsters and even adventurers had died under his blade, most of them very gruesomely. 1/2 wounds. Wandering fighter. Marvin narrowed his eyes, focusing on Green's movements. That kind of long saber was only used by the second-rank class, wandering fighter. This guy was obviously not a second-rank wandering fighter yet, but it seemed like he was thinking of going toward that path. Wandering fighters had impressive dexterity, but their strength was also quite fierce. With enough momentum, their blade could split someone in half. In his previous life, these kinds of quick and fierce moves were popular with the players. But for this kind of class, Marvin knew how to subdue them. Miss Anna, even if you said that we don't need to deal with the caster, we still need to check this masked twin blade strength. Let him fight with our level 5 fighter. We need to be sure. I believe Sir Masked Twin Blades wouldn't mind. Cat coldly said. If we win, you shut up. Anna said back with an even colder voice. Then, with a hint of disgust, either get out of here and pay your penalty, or help us repel those gnolls. Sure, Cat answered straightforwardly this time. If Masked Twin Blades displayed martial skills that could convince him, he wouldn't mind temporarily altering his plans. Being able to go along and complete the mission was good. That person, if he had told him that Masked Twin Blades would show up, he wouldn't have come. White River Valley's young lord was truly reckless, actually daring to hire a wanted criminal to recover his lost territory. According to Cat's information, things were not that simple. A lot of people were watching that territory. Even if this territory's recovery was successful, that young lord might have a lot of troubles afterwards. Thinking of this, Cat's mood turned a bit better. But that time, Masked Twin Blades coldly said, I don't fight, I kill. The living room was frozen. This guy is too arrogant. Green, angrily gripping his long saber, ruthlessly rushed to Marvin, who was leaning on the counter, intending to kill. Anna and Andre were both startled. They wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Anna's gaze was focused on Marvin, not scared that he would be hurt, but rather that he would really kill Green. Missing a team would be very troublesome. Recovering White River Valley was already difficult as it was. Marvin, still leaning on the counter, narrowed his eyes. He didn't move until Green arrived in front of him. At that time, he acted. Reaching the 20 dexterity stage gave him a strong ability to react. His eyes locked onto Green's right shoulder as soon as Green rushed toward him. That body part would move first when the other side planned to attack. Green's right shoulder trembled, giving a sign of him using strength. Marvin's body moved forward, and he stood in front of Green in an instant. Everyone shuddered. This kind of reaction speed, along with that weird move, not waiting for their reaction, clang, could be heard as Marvin unsheathed a dagger. This was his right-hand dagger. Because Green was also using his right hand, and his strength was definitely higher than Marvin's. In order to stop his assault, he had to use a slightly stronger move first. Even though two-weapon fighting gave Marvin's hands more or less the same skill proficiency, there was still a strength gap. Green was shocked. Before he had time to lift his long saber up, he already suffered a hit from the back of the dagger. Green bellowed, before quickly adapting. He immediately did an attack from below, a small curved slash, the edge of his saber aiming at Marvin's lower half. Marvin sneered. Seems like this brother has seen this trick way too often. Second stab. Left hand. A simple block that didn't require much skill. As long as he found the spot with the weakest strength on the long saber, he could stop the momentum. To Marvin, this kind of move wasn't an issue. Clang! Marvin stopped the attack. But at the same time, Marvin's third attack was already on the way. Two-weapon fighting was powerful because of the ability to multitask. His left hand was blocking while his right hand was attacking. The cold blade kept flashing under the candlelight. This dagger was aiming at Green's neck. Even if the latter was still wearing a leather armor, he would simply be unable to withstand Marvin's dagger. The other were watching with a blank look, feeling stifled. Marvin moves and reaction speed. It felt as if he completely saw through Green's moves. 3 moves. He only needed 3 moves to push Green into a dead end. Cat was shocked. He felt his intestines turn green from regret. If the dagger really kept going Green's life? Stop! Someone anxiously shouted. It was actually Anna. The next second, Marvin Dagger's momentum slowed before lightly hitting Green's shoulder. Clang! Green was sweating. He let go of his long saber, and it fell on the ground. There was an uproar. Green was considered as an expert among Rivershore City's low-level adventurers. But he couldn't receive more than 3 attacks when facing masked twin blades. And looking at his appearance, he had received a huge shock. As a fighter, to be unable to handle a dagger combo. If it wasn't for Miss Annie yelling on time, maybe... Anyway, the fame of masked twin blades in Rivershore City should rise. As for Green, as someone aiming to be a wandering fighter, he had received a serious blow to his confidence. It would take a long time to overcome it. Whether he'd be able to completely recover or not was the question. Marvin inwardly praised Anna. She yelled at the perfect time. Otherwise, Marvin would have needed to deal with Green to keep the image of masked twin blades, though it was something that the two had planned previously. Marvin would be in charge of intimidating them, and Anna would be in charge of soothing them. That way, the group of troublemaking mercenaries would know their place. Soon, someone came and helped Green up. Anna noticed that this man was sweating. It was clear that he felt extremely pressured by those earlier moves. Rock, standing on the side, also didn't say anything else. This pugilist had a grave expression. Fear was especially noticeable when Marvin gave him a meaningful glance. Pugilists would clearly suffer losses when facing daggers. Rock came to the conclusion that he would lose his life if he went against masked twin blades. This was someone whose blade skills were close to perfection. Even if some actions were strangely stiff, he was already quite abnormal. Is there any more questions? Anna smiled. The adventurers in the living room didn't say a word. The old cripple, seeing what had happened, served food, coffee, and so on. The tension eased a little as everyone began to eat. Anna didn't let the adventurers go check in at the inn after dinner. She directly started planning. First was White River Valley's entrance. There were 4 gnolls standing guard there, and 2 of them were archers. Of course, those are no problem. The problem was the 6 mutated Aardwolves. Mutated Aardwolves were the strongest in the gnoll pack. Even the Bramble team didn't dare to look down on them. The 2 captains came closer, surrounded by their team members. The solo adventurers also approached. According to our information, the gnolls set up a sentry post here. Tomorrow evening, we have to surprise attack that place. We can't let any Aardwolf or gnoll escape. There are 2 fighter gnolls and 2 archer gnolls. Those aren't an issue. But those 6 mutated Aardwolves are the most troublesome. Anna took out an old-fashioned map and wrote down the situation in the corner. Her writing was very organized, with just a few sentences clearly describing the situation. Even the 2 experienced captains couldn't help but be awed. This half-elf was really talented. There are sentries on both sides of the forest. It's a natural cover, but these mutated Aardwolves' dexterity is also impressive. Do you have any ideas? Anna looked at the 2 team captains. Marvin obviously already had a plan, but he let Anna ask the adventurers first. He wanted to see if there were a few talented adventurers in that group. Cat stayed silent. His subordinate just got defeated by masked twin blades, putting him in a very bad mood. Based on the current situation, wanting to wreck this mission would be very troublesome because they couldn't make it too obvious. He could only pray that they would make a mistake in the battle and then leave defeated. That way they could get the money and save their reputation at the same time. Unfortunately, the other captain had different thoughts. As the captain of the Bramble team, Gru had a lot of experience. He mumbled for a bit before saying, maybe we could use a few traps. These mutated Aardwolves are hard to deal with, so attacking them from the front is definitely not a good idea. However, we could lure them to a trap. Gnoll fighters are level 2 on average, and those Aardwolves are definitely higher than theirs. This means that the sentries there aren't controlling the Aardwolves. Maybe we could make something here. A smile could be seen on Anna's face. Bramble's people were quite reliable. Mr. Gru and I had the same thoughts. My plan was also like that. We will draw those 6 mutated Aardwolves to a trap on the side of the forest, and then use a kind of method to kill them thought up by our Lord. As for the specifics, we can talk about them later. Mr. Vern, since those 6 mutated Aardwolves are handed to our garrison and Mr. Gru's Bramble team, Your Lynx team will be in charge of those 4 gnolls. Is that fine? Anna smiled at Cat. The latter felt helpless. Could he still say anything about this kind of plan? Their Great Lynx team wouldn't be unable to deal with 4 gnolls, right? If they really ruined the mission that way, his team wouldn't be very respected in Rivershore City. As for those 3 solo adventurers, they didn't need to do anything in that first battle. They only needed to stand on the side and cheer. Well, it's late. Mr. Vern and Lynx members, you can go back to your rooms to rest. Anna told them to leave in a not too soft nor too hard way. What she meant was quite obvious. The garrison and the Bramble team would work together to eliminate the 6 Aardwolves, which certainly needed a few tactics. However, she didn't want to let the Lynx members hear those. Vern turned green, but masked twin blades suddenly got up and went to the 2nd floor. The other 3 solo adventurers also returned to their own rooms. The humiliated Lynx members could only leave the living room. Only Anna and Gru were left to discuss tomorrow's tactics. The 2nd floor restroom seemed a bit dirty. The old cripple clearly didn't really clean it well, because no customers had visited in a long time. A Lynx member returned to his room, leaving the depressed Cat going to the restroom by himself. Damn it, that supposedly easy money is not that easy to get. He gloomily went in, but out of nowhere, a dagger was put on his neck soundlessly. A person was hidden in the shadows of the restroom. Masked twin blades. You, what do you want? Cat was startled. He was well aware of the ranger's hiding skills, as he was also a ranger. But he didn't expect this masked twin blades to actually hide in the restroom to sneak attack him. What is that guy thinking? He isn't really thinking of killing me, right? Thinking of this, he started sweating profusely. Don't do anything foolish, Marvin coldly said. What are you talking about? Cat turned stiff. His sneaky movement toward his own dagger was clearly noticed by Marvin. The struggle between the upper forces of Rivershore City is not something that you, a small trash, can participate in, said Marvin emotionlessly. I know about the big shot behind you. He thinks that Baron Marvin is only a young noble, but in fact, is everything really as simple as it looks? I only reminded you out of kindness. Don't do anything foolish. If you make an unforgivable mistake leading to White River Valley being unable to be recaptured, making me unable to accomplish my mission, then you'll never be able to get the reward that big shot promised you anyways. Trust me, it won't be a problem. As far as I'm concerned, killing is an easy thing. Bang! Marvin pushed Cat aside, put away his dagger, and left the restroom. Cat was sweating all over, Marvin's few sentences repeating in his mind. He was a very suspicious person. Masked twin blades made him very perplexed. That guy known as Bear Marvin was only a noble in dire straits. So how could he hire such a powerful expert? Could it be that he had someone backing him? Thinking this far, he couldn't help but start shivering. The conflicts of the upper layer big shots were definitely not something that they, a small hired team, could participate in. If not careful, they would just be sacrificed. Masked twin blades talked about a mission. Could it be that someone is ordering him to help with the recovery of White River Valley? And that person is definitely not that young boy Marvin. To be able to send this kind of expert, the person behind definitely has power. Masked twin blades made such a ruckus in the city, yet wasn't even caught. Don't tell me. Cat suddenly thought of something, and it frightened him to death. Wizards. After Miller's case, the omnipotent wizards unexpectedly announced that they were unable to find any trace of the killer. This was absurd. After the wizards started ruling this world's era, everyone believed that the wizards were able to do anything. Not being able to find a killer, this really was too fake, right? Unless masked twin blades worked for the chief of the wizard regiment. This would explain everything. Cat's lateral thinking was really formidable. In a short time, he had already thought far ahead. Oh heavens, putting it this way, masked twin blades is actually someone from the city lord's side. The city hall is only a dog sitting below the city lord. I almost became crazy and went against the city lord. Oh heavens, oh heavens. That's what happened, that's what happened. Cat foolishly stood in the restroom doorway for no less than 10 minutes, slowly recovering. At that time, Gru arrived from the lower floor and gave Cat a weird look. Vern suddenly became aware that he wasn't behaving properly. He wordlessly went back to his room, not knowing what to think. Gru returned to his own room. Just as he pushed open his door, his eyes narrowed, and he grabbed his big sword from his back. There was something amiss. Someone else was in his room. Don't be nervous. A candle was lit in the room. Marvin was calmly sitting there, looking at Gru. I only want to talk about some things with you. Gru didn't lower his guard. Who would dare to relax when facing masked twin blades? His hands were still holding onto the heavy sword, ready to attack at any time. What discussion? We are complete strangers. Gru said, let's have a chat about your daughter. I want to know her condition, Marvin said seriously. Gru stared blankly. What on earth have you heard? Gru frowned. He would always become very tense when it was about his daughter. He was a calm and steady man, but everyone had a weakness. Obviously, that girl who was still lively a few months ago was this man's weakness. I didn't hear anything. I only heard that she was sick, Marvin said simply. I'm just asking about her condition. Gru hesitated before finally replying. Her sickness is quite serious. The doctor said she might not last more than a few weeks. We went and looked for a silver church priest, but those low-level priests were powerless. The only way would be to seek high-level priest blessings. But those are quite expensive. We borrowed a lot of money, but it is still not enough, said Gru frankly. Even though masked twin blades was a strong threat, he still said things as they were. Her sickness appeared suddenly? Marvin asked. Yes, that's right. Gru was surprised. Could it be that you were a doctor, Mr. Masked Twin Blades? No way. I only saw a few cases while traveling. Marvin casually displayed an experienced attitude. Even a veteran adventurer like Gru was unable to see through it. What? You've seen the sickness. Gru became excited. His daughter was his only worry. His wife died young, so he considered his daughter his most precious treasure. He would do his utmost to satisfy her requests. As thus, she had turned into a spoiled and willful girl, fooling around outside all day with some messy people. Gru was quite helpless about this. As an adventurer, being out all year round was a very normal thing. He could only keep making money to satisfy her materialistic needs. But she was sick now. Gru felt as if his own heart was cut out. This kind of fatherly feeling, only those who experienced it could understand. Of course. That's why I asked just now, said Marvin unhurriedly. Is she turning yellowish and withering, while her eyes are shining? Does her neck have small black spots similar to smallpox? Gru was shocked. You? How do you know? He began to tremble. Mr. Gru, you are lucky. Not many people in Feinan know of this thing, Marvin calmly said. Don't be shocked by what I'm about to tell you. Your daughter didn't catch a sickness. It's actually a plague. It has only appeared 3 times in Feinan's history. Each time it destroyed a few neighboring cities. Dark sweet poison, I don't know if you heard of it. Gru stood there, stunned. The dark sweet poison was in fact a plague, which came from the plague god. This evil god had wanted to join the fun in Feinan Continent a long time ago. A perfect world for him was one filled with terror, plagues, and death everywhere. He spread the dark sweet poison everywhere. Everyone infected by this plague would look malnourished, but there would still be light in their eyes. At this time, it would also bring about hallucinations, making victims think that they reached the heavens. Their appetite would increase. What they ate would nourish those black spots on their neck. Those black spots would continuously drain their vitality. The dark sweet poison was very frightening. A lot of lives would be lost every time there was an outbreak. The first outbreak of the dark sweet poison was during the Elven era. At that time, mankind's status was very low and the quality of life was obviously quite bad. When the plague appeared, almost 1/10 of mankind got infected. The plague god's strength increased tremendously. At that time, a saint arrived. He brought with him the method of getting rid of the dark sweet poison, rescuing mankind from the abyss of suffering. That sage's surname was Brando, but his first name was unknown. Some said that he was an incarnation of the elven god, while others believed he was an incarnation of the wizard god. In short, after that saint treated the dark sweet poison, he disappeared from Feinan's world. The name dark sweet poison had also disappeared. People gradually forgot this terrible plague, but Marvin remembered quite clearly. The dark sweet poison outbreak was also one of the signs of the chaotic era, although its source was quickly suppressed by the legendary wizards. But this was only a small probe from the plague god, nothing more. Feinan's records were very clear. That saint emerging during the first outbreak wasn't a god's incarnation. He was in fact only a mortal, a master herbalist and master apothecary. As for that plague's true ending, it wasn't a result of saint medicines. In fact, when the plague god spread the plague, he didn't pay attention and spread the plague in the West Forest. This directly angered the nature god. The nature god erupted in anger, and with his strong divine power, he beat up the weak plague god more than enough. The pathetic plague god hadn't had time to develop his own territory when his divinity almost got broken by the nature god. Fortunately, the fear god, destruction god, and other evil gods helped him, or he would have been sealed in a bottle by the nature god so he could play with him at any time. Since then, the plague god moved cautiously, not doing anything to those gods. He spent a lot of time to grow his own influence in another place, slowly recovering his strength. And after the nature god, elven god, and other second-generation old gods slowly became less active, he began to grow restless and wanted to try again. That first invasion of dark sweet poison in Feinan was only a small experiment, nothing more. Now various gods were planning to attack the universe magic pool. It was quite obvious to every god, regardless of weak or strong divine power, that this was an opportunity, an exceptional chance to increase their influence and get more followers. The universe magic pool, for wizards as well as mankind, was a great blessing. However, it was a layer of shackles and restraints for gods. After the wizard Godlance's departure, they had already wanted to break it. They only needed an opportunity. Putting it like that, isn't my daughter incurable? Gru's lips turned pale. Hearing Marvin's introduction of the dark sweet poison, he started sweating all over. His own daughter was in fact infected by a plague. This was quite a terrible thing, not even mentioning whether he could save his daughter's life. If others knew about it, she might be burnt to death by scared people, right? Even if there were wizards in this world, they were still as ignorant as those from Earth's Middle Ages when facing something like a plague. Caught the plague? Consider that person dead. Fear spread even faster than plagues. In a way, panic and plague were indeed the perfect match. Unfortunately, the fear god and the plague god were both male. They couldn't match. They could only occasionally meet and help each other out. If your daughter was incurable, I wouldn't be sitting here, Marvin said emotionlessly. I actually know of a method that could save your daughter. What? Is that for real? Gru suddenly saw hope. Masked twin blades didn't really need to deceive him. Since he said so much, he should have some assurance. Gru felt a bit spirited. Don't worry, dark sweet poison stays in hibernation for a long time. Only in that split second when someone dies, the infected would explode. At that time, the plague would spread through the air. We still have time. The most important thing right now is to recover White River Valley, because the method to rescue your daughter just happens to be in Baron Marvin's castle. As Marvin stood to leave, he patted Gru's shoulder. Relax. Being this nervous won't be good for tomorrow's fight. Gru replied in a hoarse voice, yet smiling. Really? Thank you so much. Even if I don't know what your relationship with Baron Marvin is. However, we, the Bramble team, will certainly go all out for this mission. Next day at nightfall, everyone finished preparing and quietly gathered at the sentry posts on both sides of the forest. Just like they planned, the Garrison and Bramble team went one way, while the Lynx team and those 3 solo adventurers went the other way. Let the bait out, Anna said indifferently. On the side, Gru nodded. One woman behind him suddenly leaned forward and started chanting a spell. She soon turned into a beautiful cicada deer. The Cicadere jumped twice before suddenly rushing along the big road and then back into the woods. Roar! The 6 idle, mutated aardwolves noticed the Cicadere and started drooling. They all began to chase together. Not good. It actually attracted all 6 aardwolves at the same time. The group hidden in the forest couldn't help but be somewhat gloomy. The original plan was to only attract a portion of those mutated aardwolves at a time and eliminate them in small groups. The pressure was quite high now that they were facing 6 mutated aardwolves. But thinking of masked twin blades, that guy with frightening strength standing behind them, both the White River Valley's garrison and the Bramble team felt very calm. The Cicadere nimbly jumped through the forest, following the already fixed plan. Everyone got into position. Marvin was calmly standing on a big tree's branch, focused on the operation. Those mutated aardwolves were really ignoring the orders of the ordinary gnolls. They only listened to that gnoll sorcerer's most basic commands, but they still couldn't fight their instinct. This was good news. The Cicadere's speed was quite fast. In fact, she would be able to leave those aardwolves behind if she used some strength. But for the sake of the plan, she had to slow down. Actually, these mutated aardwolves were quite strong, but they seemed to be lacking in explosive power. This might be the price of taming them. The Cicadere soon arrived to the scheduled place. The 6 chasing aardwolves arrived almost at the same time. 6 aardwolves, the traps aren't enough. Marvin looked towards Gru hiding behind a big tree. The latter nodded slightly. The 2 men instantly reached a tacit understanding. The cooperation between experienced adventurers was very comfortable. Often, one meaningful glance was enough to communicate their intentions. 1 each. Gru's burst power might not be as strong as Marvin's, but his strength was good enough to block a mutated aardwolf. The other 4 would just be taken care of by the garrison and the others. Marvin had already established their tactics. There shouldn't be any problem as long as they followed the plan. Marvin jumped down and rushed toward one mutated aardwolf, catching it off guard with a stomp to its head and then flipping over. It was as if he was doing acrobatics on the large back of the aardwolf to keep his balance. And on the other side, Gru aimed at another mutated aardwolf's head with his heavy sword. Clang! The mutated aardwolf's instinct wasn't bad. It actually used its hard claws to endure the sharp, heavy sword. The 2 of them started having a contest of strength. Things seemed quite showy on Marvin's side. He had experienced quite a lot of things, so killing a mutated aardwolf wasn't much of an issue. 20 dexterity was enough to let him know when the running wolf would make a sudden move. He suddenly leaned downward. With a whoosh, his right hand pulled out a thin silver wire. This was a tough silver wire, a weapon bought from the Ranger Guild, and also a very unusual killing weapon. Even if it wasn't an uncommon item, it was considered quite strong among the common weapons. The mutated aardwolf frantically shook his body, trying to throw Marvin off its back. But Marvin's legs were tightly circled around the aardwolf's lower back. He took advantage of the moment when the aardwolf roared and stood up to ruthlessly wrap the aardwolf's neck with the wire in his hand. Schwa! The thin silver wire constricted the aardwolf neck. It painfully roared, but even its roar was suppressed by the pressure on its throat. Marvin seemed to be flying as he jumped and grabbed a branch. He made a tight knot on a thick and solid branch with both ends of the silver wire. He then just stably stood on the tree, looking down toward the aardwolf crazily thrashing on the ground. The tough silver wire would just keep digging onto its neck as it kept struggling. Soon, its fur began to be filled with blood, but its movement also became more and more fierce. This was an empty-headed beast. If it had wisdom, it would have known that it would be best to stop moving. But its intelligence was truly underwhelming. It even began to frantically run away from this place, trying to run away far from Marvin, this frightening human. Unfortunately, it soon choked to death because of its stupid actions. Target has died. 98 battle EXP received. Mutated aardwolves had no useful loot, so Marvin wasn't interested in looking. He glanced at Gru and found out that he had already used strength to suppress the mutated aardwolf. This guy's strength really can't be underestimated. He actually had that much power. He might also be holding back. Marvin hurriedly put away the silver wire and went to the place they had agreed on beforehand. But he didn't realize that Gru was even more amazed when he saw Marvin easily killing a mutated Aardwolf like that. Something like tough silver wire could be bought at some places, but very few people were able to use it. Using this thing to kill someone was simply wishful thinking. Not to mention when fighting those frightening beasts. Where could they find this kind of opportunity? However, Marvin did it. This guy's dexterity, has he already reached the limit threshold? Being able to coordinate his body like that would be impossible without a lot of years of training. In the end, who is he? He suddenly appeared in the south. Could it be a ranger from the north? Bramble's captain was puzzled, but his hands didn't relax. After a furious shout, Gru, who had finished storing power, saw an opportunity and let out a powerful, bloodthirsty cleave on that mutated Aardwolf's head. Woo! This one blow directly split the head in half. Brain matter scattered everywhere. On the other side, the 4 Aardwolves chasing the Cicadere also had a bad ending. The Cicadere rushed to the prepared location and slowed down, steadily moving past some level ground. Even though she shape-shifted into a deer, her weight was still very light. She was at least lighter than the mutated Aardwolves by 2/3. As a result, when the 4 Aardwolves, in a hurry to kill, came over, they fell in the trap that the group had dug beforehand. It was a huge pit with some brittle tree, planks, and twigs, camouflaged quite roughly, but considering the intelligence of mutated Aardwolves, the hole wasn't considered very deep. The Aardwolves roared, tried to get out, but they couldn't do anything. The pit was covered with pine resin and rapeseed oil. Marvin let Anna prepare the things beforehand, and she had intentionally bought those 2 kinds. Rotten low-rank pine resin and cheap black oil, cooking oil used and discarded. These seemingly useless things had become the bane of those mutated Aardwolves. They kept pushing each other, continuously slipping and unable to crawl up. Burn them! A torch was thrown in by one of the garrison members. Crash! Flames immediately spread through the whole pit. The mutated Aardwolves kept howling endlessly. Fear of fire. This is the mutated Aardwolves' biggest weakness. Marvin watched as the flames ruthlessly swallowed those Aardwolves up, feeling satisfied. He had noticed that those mutated Aardwolves' fur was already quite greasy, coupled with the burning pine resin. Tssk. This roasted wolf meat was actually quite a sight. In the forest, the sounds of anguished howls from the Aardwolves could be heard. The garrison still had their weapons in hand, not slacking off. The Bramble team members gathered, along with Gru, who had just finished dealing with his Aardwolf. They were quite satisfied with this first battle's results. They didn't have any casualties. This was an adventurer's most important goal. That was why their eyes were filled with a lot of respect and gratitude when looking at Anna. Because this was Anna's plan. Only, they didn't know that everything was planned by Marvin, controlling from behind the scenes. The Lynx should have gotten rid of the gnolls, right? That woman who shape-shifted into a Sika changed back. It's just that she wasn't wearing much, only a plain overcoat. Shape-shifting was rather annoying. Every transformation would burst one's clothes. Humph. 9 people for 4 gnolls. If they can't manage to deal with it, they don't need to stay in the field, another team member said. Everyone was quite relaxed. Only Marvin stayed vigilant. It was because he knew that often, when victory was in the palm of your hand, it could still be snatched away. Roar! With a bellow, a huge figure jumped out from the pit. Everyone was startled. This mutated Aardwolf actually stepped on his comrades' bodies to force himself to jump out of the hole. This jumping ability was far beyond his own abilities. It must have been due to the crisis arousing potential. He charged into the group while still on fire all over. Gru was alarmed. Without saying anything else, he grasped his heavy sword with both hands. But someone was faster than him. Marvin spun his twin daggers, crazily rushing forwards. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of the flaming Aardwolf. Careful, Gru yelled. He also noticed the frightening flames on the Aardwolf. Even if massed twin blades was powerful, if he wasn't careful, he might lose his life. Because of their many years of adventuring experience, Gru let his team have freedom to choose appropriate actions on their own. Clearly, This mutated flaming wolf would quickly burn to death. They only needed to drag it out for a bit and not get taken down by it. Why is masked twin blades so reckless? Gru thought. He waved his heavy sword with a speed no less than Marvin's. In that split second, Marvin had already rushed in front of the flaming wolf. He seemed incomparably calm, and suddenly kicked the ground and leapt high. He did an incredible somersault, high up in the air, and gracefully dodged the maw of the flaming wolf. He ruthlessly stabbed his two curved daggers into the weakest part of the wolf's neck. This wasn't enough. After the tumble, his feet landed on the handles of both daggers, the left and right feet. Marvin put force in his legs, and both daggers immediately cut through. Plop! Blood flew everywhere. Its head had dropped from the rest of the body. Yet Marvin just calmly jumped down. The mutated Aardwolf that had jumped up from the fire pit was already an arrow at the end of its flight. After Marvin's powerful attacks, it immediately reached 0 HP. You did a normal attack on the target. Your hit crippled the target. Normal attack turned into crippling attack. Target died. You gained 120 battle EXP. Marvin happily looked at the battle log. This mutated Aardwolf should considered quite outstanding compared to the others, or else it wouldn't have given more experience than the previous one. Sadly, those mutated Aardwolves that died in the fire pit didn't give him any experience, or else he could have quickly earned a lot. Close by, everyone was stunned after seeing the performance. Someone in the Bramble team remarked, "I finally understand how he was able to kill Diaphius." The others were speechless. Gru, who started rushing forwards, was standing foolishly halfway there. This kind of skill was simply unheard of. This was far beyond a matter of physical ability. Rather, it was achieved through fighting experience, reaction time, a tenacious mind, as well as perfect control of his body. How much training did this kind of person do in order to reach this level? They couldn't help but think of this. But in fact, Marvin only liked to play games, nothing more. Feinan Continent was a very appealing game. Every detail felt very lifelike, the same as real life. He was like a fish in water inside the game when it came to leveling, but also at PK. He frequently battled strong experts. He fought a duel with almost every class legendaries, and also had an understanding of all classes. His mind was controlling his body. He trained himself in the game through constant PK and death. Being the strongest assassin among the players wasn't at all easy. Because of these experiences, as well as his control over his body, Marvin would certainly become a very frightening existence here in the true Feinan Continent. But to get there, time was needed. He still needed time to grow. Unfortunately, right now, time was the thing he lacked the most. The Great Calamity was approaching. After killing 6 mutated Aardwolves without even losing a hair, the Bramble team had a lot of respect while looking at Marvin. Adventurers were like that. Display strong abilities, and it will make others convinced and view you in a new light. Even though Anna was the one with the most contribution because of her plan, if not for Marvin making the split-second decision to kill a mutated Aardwolf and also bravely rushing to kill that flaming wolf at the most dangerous moment, the others might have been wounded or killed. Battles were just that merciless. Anyone could die. On the other side, the group of 9 naturally had no problems eliminating those 4 pathetic gnolls. Even if Cat was still thinking of making some trouble, 9 expert not being able to kill 4 gnolls. If this kind of thing was spread, the Lynx team would never be able to get any business again. After Marvin's threat yesterday, how could he dare think of doing anything wrong? Especially after they joined up with the other group. He clearly noticed that the Bramble team seemed to have a subtle change in the way they were looking at Marvin. It was a kind of respect that was difficult to explain. It was as if Marvin had convinced them through power. Cat didn't know what took place in the woods, but this masked twin blades must have displayed some frightening strength. Or else these usually domineering Bramble members' eyes wouldn't display that kind of expression. Vern speculated that his team's strength was not as good as that of the Bramble team. Seeing this made him completely give up on causing trouble. It was better to just finish this mission. As for that important client, that reward was bound to not be his. His thoughts changed, and he returned to being proactive. What's next? Sneak attack the castle? Sneak attack. Anna shook her head. No, we're taking it by storm. But not the castle. The northern mine. At the northern mine, 2 mutated aardwolves were restlessly patrolling the surroundings. As for those 2 gnolls, they were unaware of the storm that was coming. Only take half of our forces, Anna said, according to Marvin's plan. We need to let one run, but wipe out the rest. Let one run. They were all somewhat surprised. To let a gnoll go free, could it be to let him report the situation? Is it better than mounting a sneak attack? I understand. Lynx's captain was worthy of being known for having a swift mind. He was the first to react. We use half of our force to make them misjudge our strength. As a caster, he would certainly be arrogant. Letting one loose might infuriate him. If that's the case, we wouldn't need to attack the castle. They would come themselves to the northern mine to look for us. Anna nodded. You are right, this is the plan. Hold on. What if that gnoll sorcerer isn't arrogant? Wouldn't we waste a sneak attack plan? Vern hurriedly asked. If they don't fall into the trap, Lord Marvin already gave me a follow-up plan. Anna calmly added, let's execute the first part of the plan for now. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not need to take care of it this time. Let our garrison deal with it. Hearing this, the White River Valley's young men were already unable to hold back. They already wanted to kill a few gnolls to vent their hatred. They were forced to run away from their territory because of those gnolls taking refuge in the villages inside the mountain. That shameful feeling the adventurers couldn't understand. The adventurers only came for the money. As for Andre and them, they were here for their lord, in their own honor. Brothers. Andre lifted his heavy sword with both hands. He was also a fighter like Gru, but his level was a bit lower, only level 4. The other garrison members were more or less the same, level 3 to level 4 class holders. However, their advantage lay in their training. They were able to coordinate with each other, and they also had pretty good equipment. Second-hand equipment from River Shore City's defense army. Even if it was a bit old, it wouldn't be too different. Andre only said one word, and nothing more. Kill. The young men behind him were immediately fired up. They had waited for this word, waited for who knows how long. They had almost choked to death. Damn it, those fucking gnolls actually invaded their hometown. If not for Lord's order, they would have already fought to the death with those gnolls. Now that the captain already gave the order, what else could they be waiting for? It was one word. Kill. When the enraged garrison members rushed out of the forest under Andre's orders, most of the gnoll fighters weren't ready to fight. Roar! Andre was roaring while swinging away with his heavy sword and cut 2 gnolls as easily as if he was chopping vegetables. The others were also not lacking, rushing one after the other and bravely attacking the enemies. This was bound to be a bloodbath. It only lasted 3 minutes. The fight already concluded. Both mutated aardwolves were cut to death by Anna and Andre. As for the gnolls, their corpses were spread on the ground. Only one gnoll that was a quicker runner than the others was stealthily escaping, although everyone let him run on purpose. The gnolls stationed outside the northern mine were annihilated in one breath. Next was cleaning up the battlefield. Even if gnolls were poor, there might be some valuable spoils of war.